Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated Legacy action. Today we are exploring the space of what could happen with a banning in the Legacy format. We've done a little bit of this already, so I'm continuing on the trend a little. So, Blue-Black Reanimator is the best deck in Legacy. It's got nearly twice as many top 8 finishes as the second best deck. It's clearly overperforming, and we're all expecting it to get something taken out of it. But what is the question? We've already explored the space of what happens if Reanimate goes. Today I'm exploring what happens if we lose Troll of Khazad-dum. Now you might say, Troll of Khazad-dum doesn't seem that big of a deal, you know, it's just some little guy. Or rather some 6/5 guy. But this does so many things for the Reanimator deck. This gives you a shuffle effect. It gives you really stable mana, so you can use your colourless Wastelands to go and get you your swamp and just be set up for the game. And it also gives you something to reanimate if you haven't got an Entomb. So it's just a nice way of enabling other stuff going on with your deck. And, you know, this hits pretty hard and it's quite difficult to block. So it's quite a potent card that has made a big difference to these decks. So, I am trying to build around a hypothetical format where this card doesn't exist. And we want to see if this same deck is still viable, to see if this is the thing that you need to take out to stop this deck. Because this deck has been on top for so long that we want to be able to take something out to kind of just stop it being the dominant deck. So, is taking out the Troll the thing to do? I have replaced it with Striped Riverwinder. A 7 mana 5/5 hexproof, so pretty good. Not as good as a 6/5 unblockable, but it has the added upside of not being able to be targeted, so it's not just strictly worse. There are a lot of matchups where this actually could end up being better, like a control-heavy opponent, which has been increasing a little bit. You've been seeing a lot more Esper and Jeskai in the last couple of weeks than we have for the previous sort of 4 weeks. So this being able to dodge things like Source of Plowshares is actually a big deal. Another thing that this card does, which is really good for this deck, is be blue. Since Psychic Frog went, having enough blue cards to reliably have your Force of Will has actually been a little bit tricky at times. So this upping our blue count is a big deal. So it means that we're not going to be stuck, unable to ponder to try and advance our game plan because we can't let the shields down on Force of Will. We've just got more blue cards so we can hopefully engineer that. And cycling for a blue is not as good as cycling for a colourless. It does draw a card, so in some situations, like in the sort of mid to late game when we just have like a redraw, this might be better than having a Troll. But early on, this is definitely going to be worse than having a Troll, and it's also a lot more blockable. So I'm not expecting this to be better than Troll, but I'm expecting it to be somewhere within the Legacy power level of things to be doing, ballpark. In order to accommodate this, we had to make a little bit of change to the deck list as a whole. So ordinarily, you would see 3 Wastelands in a 17 land deck here. What I'm doing instead is I'm only running 2 Wastelands because we're losing the Troll of Khazad-dum, which can reliably get us colourless mana into a swamp. So we're having an additional fetch land, which also covers the shuffle effect, because losing the shuffle effect can be relevant when we're casting things like Brainstorm and Ponder. So we've added in a shuffle effect that is also a coloured mana source. So that should hopefully help us out a little bit. Our mana base is basically the same as like the blue-black tempo decks, which don't run the Troll but go a little bit bigger. They have more lands than us, but the other 2 lands they would have on top of this are Wastelands. And we're quite colour pip intensive for a lot of the stuff we're casting. So in theory, we shouldn't need those 2 Wastelands as much. And we do still have, you know, 4 additional cantrips to hopefully find it. Now these aren't selecting, but they are just redrawing. So it might be a case that we need 1 additional land here as well. I'm not entirely sure, but I think this should be fine and I want to try it out. As for the rest of the list, it's kind of what you'd expect. We've got Entomb, Reanimate, which goes and gets our Atraxa and Archon of Cruelty. We've got Animate Dead to bring back as well. We've got the cantrips you'd expect to see. We've got a lot of counters, Force of Will, Daze, and even a Force of Negation. There's a lot of combo around. On top of that, we've got 2 Thoughtseize and a Fatal Push as a bit of an extra interaction. We have 3 Brazen Borrowers, so we've got a nice sturdy blue count here. These can also bounce some problem permanents that our removal can't deal with until we can get an Archon down and just bust it up. Then we've got a couple of fair threats in here, so Barrowgoyf and Orcish Bowmasters. These are just, you know, solidly good cards. We can try and select for them using our cantrips. But this also just augments our sideboard plan. So when we're going into a fair plan post-board, this means that we have access to more Bowmasters. It means we have access to more Barrowgoyf. So it's kind of improving our post-board thing. It can also trip up our opponent who doesn't necessarily know we're doing Reanimate stuff. Maybe they fight pretty hard over Barrowgoyf, and then we just slam an Atraxa down and win the game. So that's what we're trying to do here. This was modified from a recent challenge list. Sideboard-wise, we've got some Consigned Memories for Eldrazi. We're going to be a little bit weaker against Eldrazi because we have 1 less Wasteland, but the Reanimate plan is just generally pretty good against Eldrazi as long as they don't have a leyline in play. We've got ourselves some Hydroblast for Blood Moons and such. We've got ourselves another Brazen Borrower if we need to be bouncing some stuff. This can also be part of our beatdown plan if we're going a bit fairer. We've got Bowmasters and the Barrowgoyf and the Dauthi Voidwalker, as I've mentioned, so we've got Graveyard Hate, that's also another threat. A little bit more counter magic for the combo matchups, some more removal, and then an Engineered Explosives which can hit all sorts of things. And that is the list. I'm excited to see how this one pans out. I think having more blue cards is going to actually feel pretty good, and who doesn't love seeing a big sea serpent, right? That's what Magic the Gathering should be all about. Alright, please remember to like and subscribe, and let's just get right into this experiment and see how it feels. If you want to play some Eternal Magic, why not check out the New York City first annual Eternal Team Trios Winter Tournament. This is a Legacy, Modern and Vintage team event, and team events are always some of the best Magic events going, so why not check it out if you're in the area. Okay, we've got Island Ponder. Our hand is pretty fair looking, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think I will keep this. We have to make a decision if we are wastelanding. Sorry, if we are playing our island or our swamp to dodge Wasteland. So that means we could either play a Thoughtseize or a Ponder, or we could get an Underground Sea and have access to the Daze as well. I think I'm going to go and get an Underground Sea here and just have maximum amount of interaction, because there's a lot of combo decks around at the moment. We do have a Ponder that we can try and leverage next turn anyway, so let's just have maximum looks at our opponent's hand and being able to counter the stuff they've got going on. They do have a Wasteland here. What am I most worried about from our opponent? I think it's probably the Brainstorm. I think we take the Brainstorm here. I'm kind of worried about this Wasteland a little bit, but I think that's fine. I suspect they're just going to snap a Wasteland off straight away here. Just reset the game. There it is. Goodbye, Underground Sea. There it goes. Okay, so we have an Island Ponder, so we can dig for what we need to. I don't think they're going to Daze us. It's certainly possible. If they see a land on top, then they definitely won't Daze our Ponder. But let's see what we draw. A Force of Will. Not really what I want for this matchup. Let's just go and get a basic island and cast a Ponder. I like a Reanimate, but not for now. I like the Brazen Borrower. We just have lots of blue cards and lots of forces. Is that really where I want to be? We could take the Reanimate, because we already have a Borrower. And then next turn we can Polluted Delta, shuffle, and see what happens. Interesting. Do I think we can win without going into the Reanimate plan right now? We could just take a Borrower, just have some interesting tempo pieces. Right, I'm going to go for the slightly higher roll of taking this Reanimate, because that's ideally what we'd like to do. That's also the highest thing that we can use our counter magic for, is to protect doing like a big Entomb Reanimate play. So we'll just see how this pans out. Volcanic Island, do they have a threat? They have a Dragon's Rage Channeler. Do I want to interact with this Dragon's Rage Channeler? I don't think so. We know they have a Daze, so it's not very profitable for us to fire off a Daze there. I would like to get a Surveil land, but I don't know if that's what we need to do yet, so I'm going to pass a turn. I'm not expecting Stifle out of our opponent's deck. It's a card that you don't see very often. I would rather play around the more likely things our opponent has. Okay, so showing us a land. That is a Dragon's Rage Channeler, just connecting for 1. I'm going to shuffle off this Brazen Borrower. I think we'll go and get our Undercity Sewers here. Let's get that Surveil action, because this could just surveil a giant monster in that we can defend. Would I like another land right now? I don't think so. A Ponder. Always happy to see you. Striped Riverwinder and a Reanimate. We can reanimate them both. Is that really what I want to do, though? I'll put these both on top, though. And then we are going to play the Riverwinder and use our counter magic to try and force it through. We can play around this Daze, that's not a problem. And maybe we can get this Murktide pitched to something. We also have the ability to Force of Will this Murktide, or possibly Daze it. It's unlikely the Daze will work, because they have the island, but if they have to, if they want to fire off like a Ponder or something first to make it a bigger Murktide, that's pretty reasonable. They could bolt us first. A Brainstorm, not a bad place for our opponent to be there. So now our information is a little bit all over the place. They milled over a Delver, so now they have a big old Dragon's Rage Channeler here. We can play this as a 3-1 that can block at some point. So I think we're going to take 3, then they're going to play the Murktide Regent. It is risky playing this with a Reanimate though. But I think we're just in the trying to answer our opponent's stuff phase of the game right now. So maybe the Reanimate isn't quite where I want to be just yet. So I could cycle this and then Reanimate their Delver, and I know the Delver will flip, but I also know that they have a Lightning Bolt. But maybe we could burn this Reanimate to get their Lightning Bolt out of hand and start trading resources. Alright, let's cycle this Striped Riverwinder. So we don't know what the next card down is. Do I want to hold mana open to play around a Daze? I think I'm just going to cycle this Riverwinder first and see if we find a land or something. We did not find a land. So we can't borrow this out of the way. If I cast a Reanimate, our opponent is going to most likely Daze it. I could Force of Will back, but I kind of need to get rid of this at some point. We're pretty close to dying to Lightning Bolt if we Reanimate the Striped Riverwinder right now. I could Reanimate the Delver just to get some interaction out of our opponent's hand. Or I could hold this up so that we can pay around a Daze. Kind of wish I had that other land from earlier now. So I could Reanimate to try and get this Daze out of our opponent's hand. I think that's an obvious Daze tag. If our opponent's got additional Lightning Bolts, they don't really care that much. So where am I putting this Reanimate? I think if we're trying to get the Daze out of our opponent's hand, we Reanimate the Striped Riverwinder. That gets pretty awkward though, because that turns off our Force of Will, because we take 7, and then we take 3, and then we're on 1. So I don't think we can do that. So I think we have to Reanimate the Delver here. Feels like we're just going to get Delvered out. Alright, then let's have that. So this is saving 2 life and making our opponent discard a card. Fortunately, our fair plan is very good against Delver. Bowmasters, not a card that the blue-red deck has, and it can really jam them up. Can ping off all of their little guys and all sorts. They're bolting our face. That is not really what we wanted to see, but it's happening. I think I'm going to Daze this bolt. Just pick up my basic island so that we have 2 untapped mana. They should Daze back here. This frees up our Borrower to bounce their threat next turn. There it is. If our Delver flips, then we at least have a blocker for this Dragonfish Channeler as well, so we might not even have to bounce this. But we're definitely not beating a Murktide. So if they play a Murktide here, we have to snap off a Force, probably pitching a Borrower. Reanimate not looking great right now. I suspect this island is probably gone from our opponent's hand when they brainstormed earlier. No Murktide. Interesting. Can I please flip you, Delver? That would help. This is instant or sorcery, isn't it? So you say no. Okay. We're dead to Lightning Bolt at this point anyway. We may as well ping in for 1. Since this doesn't fly, it's not really going to do any work for us. We had the option of bringing back a Striped Riverwinder and just hoping that our 2 forces will do enough. But the Striped Riverwinder is not going to clock in a reasonable time. We need to get this out of play. A Brazen Borrower, you say. If we counterspell this, we might die. Alright, so we're going to Petty Theft this while our opponent's tapped out. So we're not taking any damage this turn. Hopefully the Delver flips next turn and can block the Murktide they play. We have a Borrower that can then bounce the Regent. And then we can Animate Dead a Striped Riverwinder. We could even Animate Dead a Brazen Borrower. This Wasteland is obviously pretty annoying for us. Things are getting a little bit tricky for us right now. Lightning Bolt to the Dome. That'll do. Let's go to the sideboard. So our opponent's deck is not very good at dealing with Barrowgoyfs. So I would like to play some Barrowgoyfs. Engine Explosives kills all of their little guys, so that seems fine. Fatal Push is good here. Orcish Bowmasters is pretty good. Like Dauthi Voidwalker. I do not need really Force of Wills here. The only thing that I would want to Force of Will is the Murktide Regent. So if we get rid of those, we could also have a Brazen Borrower. That's just another way of dealing with it. So this is 67 cards. That is way too many. I don't think we want Thoughtseizes because we don't really want the life loss there. The Dazes are fine. We don't need a Force of Negation. How much do I want to be on the Entomb Reanimate plan? Actual factual Reanimate is a little bit sketchier against our opponent, as you saw in that game. So maybe I'm going to trim a couple of those. I think I still want the ability to Entomb Reanimate a Big O, but maybe we need to be less on that. So maybe we'll trim some numbers here. That looks alright to me. We have 4 answers to Murktide. Now, it's not a permanent answer, but it should be enough of an answer to matter. I think that's fine. I would like to have some sort of go for the throat thing that we could reach for, so that we can just point at our Murktide and say no. Hydroblast here actually is pretty good too. We should have the Hydroblast in. Whoops. Alright, we'll have a Hydroblast in next time around. If there is a next time. I'll keep this. We'll see what our opponent does, and then we can work out what our turn is going to look like. I would like to set up this Dauthi Voidwalker early. It does die to Lightning Bolts, but it shuts our opponent's stuff down and forces them to answer it. What am I going to do here? I'm going to crack this for an Underground Sea. I'm going to float a black mana. I'm just going to say no to this one. I will use my black mana now to Entomb. I'm not expecting this to resolve, but if this gets 2 cards out of our opponent's hand, that's very good for us. If it's a Daze and it sets our opponent back and we just reset the game. Okay, we just reset the game. That gives us a chance to get a little bit deeper into our deck and maybe find that second land. A Ponder, happy to see you. We're just looking for more mana. Daze is useful. We're really looking for land though. Like, we are very cooked if our opponent has a Wasteland here. There's an any orange shuffle. Alright, we drew a Ponder, which is fine. But if we just get Wasteland out of the game, then that is lights out. There is the Wasteland. Welcome to the dirt. Undercity Sewers. That's okay. It's a land. We get like half a Ponder off. Do I want this Borrower? This is an answer to a Murktide down the line. I think we're just looking for land now. I think we're just going to bin that. We have 4 Borrowers, which is loads. No Wasteland from our opponent and no 1-drop. That is the exact sort of thing I like to see. I think I'm going to cast a Brainstorm here. Alright, we have the lands now. Do I want... What do I want here? I might put back a Brainstorm. Ponder is better for finding individual cards. I'm not really going to want to move stuff around once I've got these things underneath me. Alright, so let's jam this one down. We're just going to play into the Wasteland because we don't want to get like a basic here, because I guess we could get a basic, but we should have played the Misty Rainforest if we wanted to. I think we're just going to get Underground Sea. I don't really want any of these cards. Okay, Daze is good. That gives us a Daze that we can use to chuck one of our creatures in. So we've got 4 or 5 Barrowgoyfs, which means they'll only die to something like an Unholy Heat. So if we can stick one of these, that should be game over. This can force chump blocks with, well, not chump blocks, trades with Murktide Regent down the stretch as well, which is also fine for us. Opponent's got a lot of cards in hand. They milled off a Delver. So they're probably just working towards Murktide Regent. Or they were pretty all in on this Dragon's Rage Channeler with a Murktide Regent as their later threat. That kind of feels like the pace our opponent's on. Do I care about this? No. Can we answer it anyway? Also no. This is why we've boarded down on our Reanimate plan. Like, it's a powerful thing that our opponent had to respect and interact with. And now we just get to start sending some massive friends. Okay, I'm down to just jam the big scary man. Is that true? They clearly have a lightning bolt up there. Do I play this out? We don't get to use our Daze here. We can pay around... Okay, I think I'm just going to play this because our opponent doesn't have any threats in right now. So we can pay around Daze. We probably should have left the Swamp on tap so that we have a non-wastelandable thing to pay for Daze. I might have been a little bit tighter there. But this way our opponent has to respect things like Spell Pierce. And we know they don't have a Wasteland on the previous turn. There were definitely spots where they would have used the Wasteland earlier. So it would have to be a thing they drew off the top to use here. Alright, a land that's not a Wasteland. A Murktide Regent. Sure, that's fine. It's only a little one. We get the first hit in and we now get to play a Barrowgoyf for a round of Daze. And we get to fetch our final basic. I think we're just attacking for 3 here. They can't block this because of Shadow. Let's try a big Barrowgoyf. It's bigger than Murktide Regent. Murktide Regent currently can't grow. They have a Force of Will. That's fine. We can't Daze because they have an Volcanic Island open. But we can just drop a Barrowgoyf next turn as well. We do have this stinky Animate Dead, but we can Brainstorm that away at some point, I'm sure. There is also a Force of Will in our opponent's Void area. So we play the Barrowgoyf pre-combat, and then we can use the Dauthi Voidwalker to Force of Will if we want to. And the Barrowgoyf should run away with things. They can't grow the Murktide or play another one as long as the Dauthi Voidwalker's in play. So there is a reason we might want to keep this around, but Lightning Bolt kills this very cleanly, so it's also not going to be great for us to keep this around. I suspect we just get crap for 4 because this can't block. Yeah, so this is going to put us to 13. They're paying cost on something over there. A Dragon's Rage Channeler, that's fine. This will never get Delirium. Well, not for a while at least. Do I play around... I guess we play around Force of Will if we just Wasteland this then attack. So Wasteland their untapped land. Let me go to attacks. Alright, so we'll attack for 3. And then if they have a Force of Will, we beat it. The only thing we lose to here is double Daze. I'm not going to play around double Daze, I don't think. I wish I hadn't said that because that means that's what our opponent has. But actually, we can beat double Daze because we have our own Daze, right? Yeah. Okay, so we have the biggest creature on board that also happens to have lifelink. Enjoy that, opponent. We can cash our Dauthi Voidwalker in for a Ponder, but it does free up the Channeler. The Graph Digger's Cage is probably a 1 or 2 of in our opponent's sideboard. There is a Brainstorm here. I milled over a Wasteland, so we can cash the Dauthi Voidwalker in for a Wasteland if we think that's going to be a useful thing to do. We can do something kind of interesting here. We can cast Animate Dead, targeting Barrowgoyf, and then it won't be able to bring the creature back because of Grafdigger's Cage. Then the Animate Dead goes to the graveyard, gives us an enchantment, so our Barrowgoyf hits for 5. That is a thing we are allowed to do. I'm milling over a Pyroblast, not particularly great against us. I don't really like bringing Pyroblasts that much against the blue-black Reanimator decks, because all their good spells are black. It's like Barrowgoyfs, Bowmasters, Entomb, Reanimate, Animate Dead. Those are things you really want to counter. You can kill an Atraxa in that, but that's about it. I think we're going to see an attack for 4 here. Yeah. So do I want to try and attack for 5 with this Barrowgoyf? Striped Riverwinder. We probably just want to turn this into a fresh card first. So let's do that. Would I like to put an enchantment in the graveyard? I think I would. This won't work, and we know it won't work, but that's fine. We're not doing it to do anything other than grow our little friend here. Our opponent's probably just thinking, have I missed something? Does my Grafdigger's Cage not work? It does. We just want to have +1 on our Barrowgoyf, because every point of damage is relevant when our opponent's a Lightning Bolt deck. Oh wow, their Force of Willingness. That's incredible. They have Grafdigger's Cage. Do they just really want the Surveil here? Wow. That's a miracle that worked for us, because this gives us an additional power on our Barrowgoyf now. Do I need to attack with this? No. We can keep this back and hold a Force of Will, because if this connects, then we have a 2-turn clock anyway. I think I'm just going to fire off this Barrowgoyf as an attack. See if it brings us any creatures. They presumably chump block here, but we gain 5 life. That's huge. We have a Force of Will for whatever the card that our opponent put on top of their library is, and we don't need to play this land out. We can Brainstorm it away later. I'm popping out both graveyard zones because they're both kind of relevant. Well, this is the exile zone, not graveyard, because this is all our Dauthi Voidwalker goodness. We're going to continue cracking in for 4, but we are gaining more than they're dealing. And we're just sat with a Force of Will here. A Barrowgoyf. Okay. A Petty Theft. Okay, I will turn this into a... Does it matter which one? If we hit the Pyroblast, is that better than a Force of Will? I'd rather our opponent has a Pyroblast in their graveyard than a Force of Will, I think. Counter target spell if it's blue. This means they can start putting stuff in their graveyard, but we're going to have 2 Barrowgoyfs beaten down. And this might find an Orcish Bowmaster as well, which would just be pretty savage. An Atraxa. I guess we take the Atraxa. And just deploy another little friend here. What are you going to do about my 2, 6, 7 creatures here? So the Explosives also takes out Grafdigger's Cage. So we have a lot of ways to still reanimate even through what our opponent's bringing. Alright. That felt pretty good. Let's see if we can do it again in game 3. Don't want to change anything here. Dazes get a lot worse. A lot worse. I think we'll take 2 out. We'll get this Hydroblast in. It answers Lightning Bolt. It answers potentially Price of Progress. And it answers the Dragon's Rage Channeler. So I think that's fine. Do I want all these Dazes? They didn't really do anything. So I think I'll have some Force of Wills in. I don't really want to be casting many Force of Wills, but they might be important to make us survive. And if we're pushing through something big, then I think that's okay. And we've got a nice healthy blue count. Alright, we'll give this a whirl. We spent a bit of time in the sideboard, so our opponent doesn't know if we've duked completely off or not. Brainstorm is a powerful Magic the Gathering card. Barrowgoyf is our best creature in this matchup. We have a lot of lands, we're not going to get cheesed out. It is slow. That is my one problem with this hand. I think it's okay. Like we're gonna play a real game of Magic with a bunch of turns, so I think it's fine. Ponder, please. It's a Delver. Okay, they have a threat. What do we have here? I think we play out the Polluted Delta here. That way we can't get Wastelanded. We have the option to play the Dauthi Voidwalker. We can Brainstorm end of turn, or we can go and get a Surveil land. They did not draw something to flip the Delver, so it's like a land or a creature most likely. Could be like the Mishra's Bauble. It is not the Bauble, I don't think. It's a Dragon's Rage Channeler. I don't think there's any point brainstorming in response to this. I think we're just going to go and get our Surveil land. Polluted Delta. I don't believe we need that one. We're just looking for a little bit more business here. So I'll play out this fetch land because we're always going to want to fetch in a second. And I think I want to Brainstorm here. I don't think these Animate Deads are real cards right now, and I just want to get them out of my hand. Okay, now they're real cards. Understood. We'll put away one of them. And then what's the other card we're getting rid of? I'd like to keep this land if we're going to crack this right now. I like the Barrowgoyfs, obviously. Maybe it's the Dauthi. The Dauthi Voidwalker is going to shut this down next turn, in theory. Maybe it's the Borrower. Why can't we draw on removal spells? We've got some Fatal Pushes kicking around, haven't we? Alright, I'm going to put back the Brazen Borrower. Are they going to go get Thundering Falls here? They are, okay. I'm going to crack this now. Get an Underground Sea and cast an Entomb. I'm not necessarily anticipating this will resolve. Oh, it did resolve. Okay, I would like an Atraxa, please. Well, we have the prize. Normally you would want to fight over the Entomb, because that's the thing that just turns on all of your other spells, because all the Animate Deads and Reanimates will be dead if we don't have a creature in the bin. So this makes me think our opponent doesn't have a way of stopping this coming into play. They did not flip to this Delver. I suspect the Channeler was the thing that the Delver didn't flip to on the first turn. But now they have something else. What are we looking at here? A Mishra's Bauble. Sure, this is a lot of looks. Presumably they have a fetch land. They can then look at the top of their library and then fetch it away if they want. Okay, they have a Wasteland. That means we'll be playing into Daze if we fire off this Animate Dead. This could be hard cast Force of Negation mana as well. A lot of things to consider. We will see what our opponent's up to. Alright, they take out our land. They're still only 1/1s. Because they're only 1/1s, I don't think we have to try and send this and hope they don't have a Daze. I think we can play something else that might require some action, like the Dauthi Voidwalker. A Brainstorm is definitely a card I am interested in, but I think I'm just going to play the Dauthi Voidwalker and see if we can get some interaction out of our opponent. How many bolts have they got still in their deck? We'll find out. I would like to have a land so we can at least play the Animate Dead around a Daze. Lightning Bolt targeting the Dauthi Voidwalker. Sure, that's fine. This Lightning Bolt will go to exile rather than into their graveyard because the spell resolves, then state-based effects are checked, so this will go into exile. So they won't flip their Channeler. What about this Delver of Secrets? It finally flipped. And not only did it flipped to a very strong Magic the Gathering card. Alright. What are we looking at doing here? Drawing a land, casting the Animate Dead. If we get Atraxa into play, it immediately just shuts off what our opponent's doing, because they can't attack into it profitably, and we're going to have a million cards. If we get to untap once with the Atraxa, then it's probably game over, because we just start gaining a bunch of life and mashing them up. There's a lot of keywords on this card. Right, this is a lot of damage coming in, so we probably lost our window to try and play around stuff. We're just going to have to keep jamming things and hope they work now. We can jam turn after turn, not a bad place to be. If I knew I was drawing this, then I probably would have jammed the previous turn. What is your interaction here? I'm not expecting this to resolve. If they have Force of Will and Lightning Bolt, we just lose. Daze, Lightning Bolt, we lose. There's a lot of ways that this game slips away, but it's been a close, real game here. A Daze, okay. We don't want to see them put a card on top, because that means we're almost certainly dead. So we take 6, go down to 3. We're dead to Lightning Bolt. We've already got 1 Lightning Bolt out of our opponent's deck. They might have boarded down on them in favour of more interaction. This is going to be a tight one. They might fire a spell off in the upkeep just to get the Surveil, so they're more likely to draw the Lightning Bolt. But it does certainly feel like we are both playing pretty strong Legacy power level decks here. My Striped Riverwinder has not held us back, really. Thundering Falls. Don't leave it on top. I'm begging you. Okay. Wouldn't mind a land to play around Daze. We have a land to play around Daze. Okay. Let's go for the Animate Dead on the Atraxa again. We're still dead to Lightning Bolt, though. We need to get through a combat step or two. And then the Atraxa will be gaining us enough life. They're paying cost for something. A Brainstorm. Okay. They put 1 card on top of their library, so we have lost this game. I'm 99% sure. Like at this point, you're ripping for counter spells, which win the game, or Bolt, which wins the game. I guess if they have a Bolt, we bring this back. Maybe we find a counter spell, so we counter spell the Bolt. That is what we're looking at here. Force of Negation. I will let them Surveil, and then we're going to cast this Brainstorm and see if we can find some interaction. These things do not do it. GG's opponent. Really close game. I think game 1 we just kind of got a bit matched up with our lands, but then the other 2 games our lands were fine, so clearly, you know, I don't think there's a problem with the mana base there. It's just going to be a thing that happens every so often when your opponent is a Delver deck with Wastelands and stuff. Yep, I thought that was a pretty good performance. Let's go to round number 2. Well, well, well. This is certainly a Magic the Gathering hand. I will keep this one. Are you ready for some sweet Striped Riverwinder action? Windswept Heath. This is probably going to be a game where having a thing that dodges Swords to Plowshares is good. So I'm quite excited about that. What flavour are we looking at? Could be Nardu, could be like Maverick, Green-White Depths. A lot of options. It's a little guy. So we have 3 options on our turn. We can Ponder, Wasteland, or cycle Striped Riverwinder. Wasteland stops our opponent being able to make a 3-drop next turn. Ponder can maybe find some answers to whatever's going on here. Striped Riverwinder isn't necessary, really, because we can just do it next turn anyway. So if we Ponder, we're looking for a blue card for our Force anyway, but this is not going to counter many things in our opponent's deck. I think we're going for the Ponder here. If we can find a regular Force, that would be nice. Do I want any of these things? I like being able to Brazen Borrower stuff, but I think we can do better than this. Animate Dead. Okay, that can be useful. Like, the plan is to Strike Riverwinder next time, but we could Wasteland. Ooh, red mana. We on Naya Depths? I haven't seen that for a hot minute. Sure. It's a guy. So this is our window to get our creature in before our opponent can interact with it. So I'm worried about Wastelands here, so I'm going to go and crack this for a Swamp. We'll cycle the Riverwinder. Reanimate the Riverwinder. And then we're going to need to find a way to best their night. So eventually they're going to be able to put enough stuff in the graveyard that they can outclass our Strike Riverwinder. So ordinarily, if like a troll, they need to have 3 bodies. But this way they can have 1 body that's big enough. So they can turn this into a fetch land. And that puts 2 cards in. That makes it a 5/5. Right. I think step 1 here is going to be a Ponder. See if we can dig up something that answers this night. The Borrower is okay. Don't mind the Borrower. Do I want to draw a Barrowgoyf and a Reanimate? We definitely don't want to draw this Reanimate, so we put that on the bottom. Do I want this Borrower? We can play this Borrower right now, and we can choose to keep the Barrowgoyf, or we can shuffle away the Barrowgoyf. So, do I want this Barrowgoyf? The Barrowgoyf does seem pretty good on this board. I won't lie. So let's chuck this down, and let's attack. And see what they want to do. We might just ignore it. Sure. So what we can do is we can bounce the Knight of the Reliquary. So they're probably going to activate at end step. They're just playing an Endurance, are they? Intriguing. So we Daze this. Now what we have to Petty Theft this first. And then they're going to tap this to do something. And then we Daze this Endurance now when they have no mana to pay. And then they're going to go and get the Security Step to protect their Knight of the Reliquary. And then next turn we can jam this Barrowgoyf. Or we can reanimate their Endurance, strip all the lands out and shrink the size of their Knight. Now, they'll obviously grow the Knight later on anyway. But that's an interesting line that we have available to us next turn. Do you want to get Trixie lands out, or do you want to be attacking me? A Wasteland, we bounced our non-basic land to avoid this situation, so that's worked out nicely. There's Minsk and Boo, because that would be miserable. 5 mana. Well, I'm sat with this Force of Negation and no blue card. How bad could it be? Questing Druid? We like Naya Maverick? Okay, I have to read what this is. A 4 mana 4/4 lifelink trample haste. Yeah, that's pretty good. But we can block this indefinitely. But we do need to answer this Knight. They probably have a way of giving this protection. So that's a bit annoying for us. We can't play 2 cards this turn. We can Wasteland our opponent and play an Animate Dead on their Endurance. So we could get back the Endurance, strip out their lands so that this doesn't have that much power. So it isn't a one-shot against us. Although they can Wasteland their own land to do that. If we play the Wasteland first, Wasteland their land, then hit it. That works, doesn't it? Is that better than playing Barrowgoyf? If they have a thing that makes their creature unblockable with the Knight, we're dead. The other option is we Wasteland their Savannah so they don't have any forests. Oh no, it's forest or plains, isn't it? Yes, we can't take them off of that. So if they have a Security Step, we're just dead here. So I don't think we're supposed to play around Security Step. Which I guess means... what's on top of our library? It's a Reanimate, isn't it? So I think we do have to shuffle this. We just get an Underground Sea. I'll deploy this Barrowgoyf. We have to keep both creatures back. And Sejuri's Step no longer beats us because they can't give both creatures protection. And then hopefully we can start crashing with this Barrowgoyf. And then we can get a green creature to block with as well. So we can just have stuff. A Sword, 2 Plowshares. Okay, that puts us up to 7 life. That means we're not dead to a Sejuri Step here. Striped Riverwinder, not being plowable, is fairly handy. Short, we have another land, that's not an issue. Are they attacking with the Knight here? So this is going to be a 6/6. So we can block and lose our Riverwinder. Not a fan of that. Or we go to 1. I think I'm going to 1 here. We don't have a fetch hand, so that's not a problem. What have you got for us, deck? Another Underground Sea, you say. Not the one I wanted. So I've got a Wasteland here. Play the Wasteland out. I will take out this Savannah. They only have 1 red source, but I don't think they're playing many red things. I guess this stops Minsk and Boo coming down, if that's the thing they have. If you want to stop the plow in this turn cycle, it's not going to matter either way, is it? Okay, we take the plateau. I will get this endurance, please. Shrink the Knight so that we can block it more effectively. What fresh problem is this? An endurance. Okay, so now I just have enough creatures to get through, and we're dead. Okay, I see. Removal spells, please. I would like the Barrowgoyfs. And Dauthi Voidwalker is interesting. I don't really want the Hydroblast here. I don't think they're running many red spells. How useful is our counter magic? Force of Negation is basically, from what it looks like our opponent's doing, and this is only going to hit Green Sun Zenith. So I don't think we want the Force of Negation. I don't even know if we want all of our forces. Our opponent's got a bunch of mana dorks. So Orcish Bowmasters, well, they might not have a bunch. They might just have some. But I think we probably want these. These are extra bodies. I just think we want like removal. It probably means you want the explosives. So do I like Dazes against our opponent's deck? Not especially. It's quite an easy thing for them to play around. Thoughtseize is okay. It stops an endurance ahead of the fact. I think that's reasonable to keep in here. It's not a great top deck though. Do I like the Thoughtseize just to make our reanimation plan better, or are we just going to peel off the reanimation plan a little bit? Thoughtseize with reanimation spells is good though. How useful is the Brazen Borrower? We can tempo away their 3-drops. That can be useful. Is it useful enough is the question. We don't really want lots of these Force of Wills. Our opponent does have some scary stuff. I'm going to peel back on the Force of Will a little bit. Maybe it is the Thoughtseize we don't have the space for here. And then the Brazen Borrowers are fine, but not that impressive. But I think we probably need to keep them for blue count. What we're looking at here. 19, that's okay. I don't really want to go lower than that. Which means we're probably peeling off some of these. They're going to be playing creatures. So we will have targets for the Entombs in theory. But they're not going to put our creatures in the graveyard. So maybe we... Are we going back on the Entomb here? I don't think we're going back on the Entomb. I think we're just going to trim down on one of each of these. I think is fine. Right, let's try this. Okay, I'll keep this. So I could cycle the Riverwinder and try and go on turn 2 to make a 5/5. I think if we do that, we're starting with a basic island, because any of the other lands in our deck will give us black mana or colourless mana for the 2 wastelands. But we're not really counting those as lands. We're counting. Okay, 5 cards in our opponent's. 4 cards. They got ley lines. If they got ley lines, then we're pondering. Alright. If our opponent's going to try and get us with reanimation stuff, I think they'll be pitching cards to endurance or something, and that's going to be horrible for our opponent. Do I want a basic island? I think I do want the basic island. But if we draw one of these wastelands, it's going to feel bad. I just don't want it to be wasteland and just completely cheesed out of this game. That's the last thing I want to see here. When our opponent's already starting on solo resources. We found a black source. Do we get to him to Turak our opponent here? Or do we just get a 4/5 hexproof that they can't deal with? Let's find out. And endurance. I am very happy with this exchange. We just got a really nice 2-for-1 there. So they mulligan to this hand, and that's fine. So now we have just regular pondering, fatal push-in, just all the good stuff here. Are they just going to play some sort of mana dork? They are. Do we take out the mana dork, or do we hold it for the 3-drop they want to cast? But what if they play a 4-drop in Minsc and Boo? Okay, we've drawn another one, so that makes life a lot easier. Let's cast this Ponder. What do I like here? I like the Orcish Bowmasters. I'm not a big lover of the Animate Dead, though. Orcish Bowmasters can certainly lose its utility quite quickly. We have another shuffle available, though, so I'm okay to do this, I think. And we'll just snag this little Hierarch and move on with life. I think it's perfectly fine to try and dig to another land. That's reasonable as well. But Orcish Bowmasters can clean up a bunch of stuff. We've got Ponders. They've got a 3-drop. They do have the 3-drop. So we've got Brainstorm here. I need to find a fetch land, ideally. So let's just dig with this. None of these are fetch lands. That is a touch awkward for us. I don't mind having these borrowers kicking around. The Animate Dead and... Well, the Reanimate, I think, is the weakest of these right now. And then... Is it the second borrower? Okay, so now I'm going to shuffle with this Ponder, looking for a fetch land. Is the third card down a fetch land? No, this is an any order and shuffle. Did not find the fetch land we wanted to kill this. Okay, it's going to get more difficult to end this one. But we have an instant speed answer, so if they ever tap this to do anything, we can just get it. They could play a Minsc and Boo because they can tap these for mana and then turn them into something else. Yeah, that's what they're doing here. Minsc and Boo is a disaster for us, I think. I've just gone to get Wasteland, sure. Now they're just trying to cheese us out. Fetch land, please. No fetch lands allowed. This could be pyroblasted, but we need to do it. An Undercity Sewers, engineered explosives. These aren't the things we want. How useful is this engineered explosives to us right now? Not particularly. So if we put one on top, we can surveil it away, and then maybe bounce this on the following turn. Not feeling great about this one. Floating some mana over there. They still need to be aware of Dazes, but they might just be in a situation where they can't afford to play around them. Getting some basics, playing another Knight. Yeah, that's in the disaster area of things. So we could just bounce this and just buy another turn. I think that's what we have to do. We don't have the mana to do explosives for 3. But this can clean out Minsc and Boo tokens. It can clean out the Hierarchs and stuff like that. So they're just going to play a Knight and then they should bash us for 7 here. Just try and get this game won. Nope, they're doing something else. A Wasteland. Yeah, that seems pretty good given things that have happened. I guess we could have just not bounced this, but then that would have gone wrong. Why can we not draw a fetch land? Why do we only draw these? So they've got 18 damage. It's not going to take a lot for them to kill us. Alright, I'm going to just hold up and maybe they'll enable our Fatal Push. The other option there is to get the Animate Dead going. Evasion attack with both of these will flash in the Bowmasters. It's not great, but it keeps us alive. So we could block one, and then next turn we have the Bowmasters ready to go with as an enabler for this Fatal Push. I think that's a reasonable line here. Scrib Ranger, you say? Okay. Protection from blue. That's our Brazen Borrower. Told. Okay, so now this can go and fetch a Wasteland and Wasteland us again. Yep, this is irritating. This game brought to you by us not drawing a fetch land a million turns ago. If we just killed the first Knight straight away, it would have been fine. But we just drew Surveil Land and regular Underground Sea. It's gone a bit pear-shaped for us. An Archon of Cruelty. That's not the one. We don't get to reanimate anything now. We're just dead here. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we just got Wastelanded out of the game there. I did feel the lack of Troll of Khazad-dum there, because Troll of Khazad-dum being just our basic swamp would have changed the texture of this game entirely instead of just having the Sidewinder. But yeah, I think we lost to like a Malta 4 there. Our opponent obviously ripped very well. Like we got a nice 2-for-1 off early doors, but then they just had Knight into Knight, and that was very difficult for us to come back from because they specifically had the ability to just Wasteland us out of the game. So yeah, maybe we could run one more fetch land in our deck. It's an interesting thought. Alright, let's go to round 3. I do not want to keep this hand, I don't think. We're going to mulligan this one. Yeah, this looks like the busted stuff that our deck can do. I think I'm going to put back an Underground Sea. This is a turn 2 protected Atraxa. Now the protection is only a Daze, so it's not the hardest protection you've ever seen. But it's pretty good. A Ponder from our opponent. Okay, our protection just got better. So we need to fetch an Underground Sea. We're playing the Flooded Strand out so that we don't get Wastelanded. What particular strain of blue-red deck we're looking at here? Oh, Beanstalk? It's a Beanstalk. Okay. So we fight now, because this way, if they Force of Will this, they don't get anything. Okay, so we just get the Atraxa, do we? Do I want to fight this up the Beanstalk? I think we just want to make sure our thing sticks. Just get Atraxa. Alright, we just did with it. Okay, our opponent was F6'd. So what works here? We can have a Force of Will. We can have a creature, so I'll have a Striped Riverwinder, please. I'll have a Reanimate to go with it. That seems pretty good. Or I could have the Orcish Bowmasters. I think a creature they can't interact with is probably going to be pretty solid here. But we have double Force of Will Daze backing up our Atraxa. And next turn we're also going to have a 5/5 Hexproof alongside it. We're in a pretty commanding position right now. I suspect that pause at the end was them reading Striped Riverwinder and trying to work out why we're playing it. Stone Covered Plains. So Leyline Binding is the sort of thing we're expecting to see here. An Uro. This is fine. We can counter it on the backside. So our opponent ideally wants to put in a white source here that can then answer our Atraxa. It's not going to go well for them, obviously, but that's what they're trying to do. This Beanstalk can obviously accrue a lot of card advantage and may be able to get through what we're putting down. But we'll see. Will they snap this removal spell off now, if they have it? I'm not really expecting a sweeper from our opponent's deck. They want to trade 1 for 1 and then draw a bunch of cards. It's not impossible they have a sweeper, but it's not really what I'm anticipating here. Let's attack. Can I have 6 life, please? Makes my Reanimate a lot easier. Cycle the Riverwinder. Let's deploy this Swamp. And Reanimate the Riverwinder. And then we'll just sit here with Force of Will, and Daze. We can Brainstorm in an emergency if we need to. No Terminus. I'm not sure if that's the thing our opponent's playing. But generally speaking, these decks don't have much in the way of sweepers. A Leyline Binding. I would like to Force of Will this Leyline Binding, please. I will pitch. This Daze probably isn't doing anything. I'm going to pitch this Daze. We do it before the Beanstalk resolves in case they draw their Force of Wills. A Swords 2 Plowshares. Would I rather have a Brainstorm or a Borrower? I think it's the Borrower because the Borrower actually answers a Leyline Binding for a turn. They got a 3rd removal spell. Toxic Deluge for 7. Alright, Meticulous Archive. They're surveilling. They put 1 card on top of their library. Well, that's a little spooky, isn't it? This only bounces opponent's permanents. It's important to note. Right, we'll bash for some. I would like to Thoughtseize and see what they're working with over there. I'll take a Swords to Plowshares. They got 1 card on top. If it's a removal spell, I want to be able to play this Brazen Borrower. If it's like a Wrath, I want to be able to play this Brazen Borrower to beat down. Since we know their hand is nothing but lands. There's the Bayou. What was the card you kept on top, opponent? Tapping a lot of mana. They're just playing the Ure. We can bounce out of play, can't we? And then swing for lethal. A Swords to Plowshares. How do I feel about this Swords to Plowshares? I'm not super happy about it. Right, we'll bounce the Ure. And we can continue being with our Striped Riverwinder. And this is 2... So if they play this without being able to play the backside of it, then we kill them with this Striped Riverwinder in 2 turns. Hexproof actually coming up relatively clutch here. Like, we countered all their removal spells and things, but it just means that they have very few ways of interacting with this one. They don't have enough cards in their graveyard for the Uro. So they can play the front side, go up to 5, but then we have 5 power. We also have another 3 power waiting in the wings. Right, they're playing the Tundra. There is the Uro. That is not a surprise to me. We also have the ability to just draw a reanimation spell and just Entomb, Reanimate Atraxa. Sorry, not Atraxa, Archon of Cruelty. And then dome them for 3 if we need a little bit of extra damage. Do you have an answer to my Hexproof friend? Play the Borrower while we have it. This means they have something like an Endurance. They're still taking some damage here. An Orcish Bowmasters. Yeah, that is a blocker. Alright, they're treading water over there. An Entomb is not the one, is it? So they're going to have to chump block here. They probably put the... I was going to say they might put the Orcish Bowmasters in just to get more cards towards the Uro. We'll see what they have. The difference between the difference between Striped Riverwinder and the Troll has been very, very much felt in both sides this game. Like, they haven't been able to remove this, but they also have, like, they would have been able to plow it earlier if it was a Troll when we Thoughtseize them and they had a plow. But they also are able to block this. So, you know, there is a trade-off there. I don't want to draw the Archon of Cruelty, so let's cast this Entomb. Let's put this Archon of Cruelty in the graveyard. Is there anything else we don't want to draw right now? I think I'd rather keep this for Brainstorm. Thoughtseize. That's not the one, is it? So I can attack here, force a chump. They probably just chump with the Bowmasters, and then they crack for 5, and then we're kind of like not getting anywhere. We don't need to fire for this Thoughtseize until it's the turn we're going. This is an interesting choice here. I don't want them to be able to immediately play this next turn, which might happen if they die, if this dies this turn. So if we want to kill it, we can kill it on blocks, or we can just let it go and just keep the life total down of our opponent whilst ours goes down as well. Not ideal. Another Beanstalk. They've not drawn many cards from their Beanstalks. They've had a Leyline Binding and a Triumph is all they've drawn from their Beanstalks, if I remember rightly. So they've been 2-mana draw 2s, which is obviously pretty good. But they haven't gone wild with them. Okay, so now it's going wild. What is this going to exile? Their own Beanstalk? No, target non-opponent, opponent controls. So it's just not going to hit anything. Interesting, it's just a cantrip. Are they attacking with a Triumph? I think we can take the first hit for 5 here. I don't like it, but I'm going to go along with it. Force of Will, not really where I want to be. We're certainly in the zone where our opponent's deck should be able to run over us. Right, we'll attack for 5 here. So we're basically trading our life total to keep our opponent's life total stable and low. Which means that maybe we get in a situation where a Borrower bounces this at the right time and that's enough. We're also relatively open to bring an Archon of Cruelty in. We will Thoughtseize. We'll save this Thoughtseize until we need to resolve a spell, and then we'll fire it off to make sure our spell resolves. But we need to have a spell that's worth resolving first. An Animate Dead. That is a spell that is worth resolving, I believe. Let's have a look. What have you got, opponent? Show me your wares. I'm just going to hard cast a Force of Will here. They are. They do get to draw 2 additional cards. This is where they're very much just pulling ahead. Alright, Archon of Cruelty. Let's see what you do. We can sacrifice the Triumph and just put it back in the top, and then allow the Bowmaster to just keep giving them tokens to sack. Or they could just have a removal spell here and we're probably in the dirt. Let's see, I imagine this is getting ploughed. There is the Leyline Binding. So this is going to remove our Archon of Cruelty. This does give us the ability to bounce this with a Borrower down the line. Situation earlier, okay, they're just getting rid of the Animate. They get rid of the Animate Dead. And this dies. And then the Archon of Cruelty triggers. An Orcish Bowmaster, so this is just going to be able to ping us for 2 and then make a 2-2. And they're going to have something to sacrifice. So they're probably just going to sacrifice this and then it replaces itself. Yeah, I think we can probably call it a day there. Our opponent's drawn too many cards. Yeah, that was a little tough. How do I want to play this one? I like the Reanimates quite a bit. This is where not having additional Wasteland is hurting us a little bit. I would like to have more threats, please. Can I have more threats? Do we need to have answers for their Bowmasters? Another one as well. We probably need to fight over Beanstalks, although we have the Bowmasters, which are very good into the Beanstalks. How much graveyard hate do I think our opponent has? Probably not much. Maybe like Endurances and Surgicals. I think I want to kind of stay on the plan a bit. How useful is Daze? I'm just not liking Daze as much right at the moment with what I'm seeing from our opponent. Because they have a lot of lands and a lot of cheap interaction like Plow and stuff that are the ones we really need to care about. Being able to bring to Daze a Beanstalk on the play is very good. That is something I'm interested in though. So maybe we do want these. And then we strip out some of our graveyard plan. Like, we want to be threat dense. Do we need fatal pushes? We're just going to try and be the aggro. Be the aggro you want to see in the world. The Wastelands are useful. Brazen Borrower is another threat. I'm interested in having another threat. Do I need Force of Negation? Probably. Shave back on some of the Entomb stuff. How useful is Archon of Cruelty here, actually? Maybe we'll just keep the Atraxa in. Let's try that. So our opponent might have a sweeper now as well. This hand seems fine. We can Brainstorm on 1 to sort of guarantee our turn 2 play. We could just Entomb straight away and see if our opponent fights over it with counter magic. I don't hate that either. But we could use this later on as a shuffle for our Brainstorm. So we can Brainstorm in our opponent's end step here. And then in our upkeep we can Entomb if we think that's an important thing to do. I quite like that. Let's do that. We need to be getting stuff moving early on because our opponent has the late game locked in. Because that's what their deck is designed to do. Okay. I like a Wasteland here quite a lot. I like having a bunch of threats. I just put 2 Brainstorms back. Do I need to Entomb right now? No, I'll draw one of these Brainstorms, I think. Just nail that straight away. There's a bye. A Carpet of Flowers, you say? It's pretty good. It's going to blank out a lot of our Wasteland attempts here. So they're probably going to make blue mana here and Ponder, or something along those lines. Brainstorm, sure. Would love to be able to punish a Brainstorm. I'll have to come later. I think I'm going to cast this Entomb in our opponent's end step and see if we get any interaction out of our opponent. This will shuffle off the Brainstorm on the top that we don't really need, given our hand. Let's see if they fight over this one or not. This also means we're gonna shuffle and we're not having to draw the Atraxa either, which is nice enough. A Daze. We didn't find the thing we were looking for. Let's Brainstorm and look for some land. We found a land and a Reanimate. We have a Daze to back it up. You can start firing Bowmasters into our opponent's face as well in a second. That seems good. Because we put this back. Do I like Bowmasters more than I like Barrowgoyf? I think so. Barrowgoyf is just a plow and then it's done. Alright. Let's try this one on for size. Can I have an Atraxa, please? Force of Will. I'm going to say no to this with my Daze. Alright, we're in. We're drawing a bunch of cards. An enchantment. I could take blue card Force of Will here. There's only one creature, so that's pretty easy. Do I just take Force of Will and Ponder here and just turtle up? Try and get over the line with it. Do I want a fetch land? I think I probably want a fetch land more than anything else here. Yeah, so we're just going to turtle up behind what we've got going on here. Oh, we need to discard a card as well, actually. I get to discard an Animate Dead because I discard both Animate Deads. It's not really what this game is about anymore. We've got our own reanimation, our one reanimation target back. Like, obviously, Animate Deads can bring back Bowmasters or whatever later on, which is nice. So we're just going to go turtle mode, see if we can win with this Atraxa, with this Force of Will and Bowmasters to back it up. I'd probably have something like a Murktide as a finisher because that triggers up the Beanstalk. There is a Brainstorm. Another Carpet of Flowers. We're not fighting over the mana production here. We're just trying to fight over the thing that answers what we're doing. Right, so going to their second main. We get some mana from a Carpet here. 1 white mana. This strikes me as a Swords to Plowshares. I will say no to this and try and ride this Atraxa all the way because that's how we win this game. We're going to see a Volcanic Island into Pyroblast here. No, a Tundra. We're just going to see a second Plow. We are. Okay. I would like to have access to a Bowmasters just in play so they can't... We know they have Bowmasters of their own, but we have a Reanimate, so if they have a Bowmasters, then it's fine. This way, if they have a Ponder or something, or a Brainstorm... well, if they have a Ponder, we obviously respond. But if they have a Brainstorm, they can just hold it in hand and wait. This way, we can just say, you're going to be taxed for any extra cards you draw. And Up the Beanstalk is a mandatory trigger as well, so they can't refuse Up the Beanstalk triggers. That's the thing we want to punish. An Uro. Okay, kind of sad that I didn't have the Dauthi in play, but we can get rid of this Uro by playing the Dauthi and then reanimating it. We can reanimate their Uro. When it goes into their graveyard, it will go exiled underneath the Dauthi and be gone forever. So if this is an endgame we want to deal with, we have that option. A Ground Seal. Alright, our line is not going to work anymore. We do get to ping them again though. A little bit worried about this Uro. This is a Surveil land. Do I want to get an additional damage in with our Bowmasters right now? I think every point matters. So I'm going to fire it in. So if they play an Uro, it's going to make our Orc army a 6/6, which can trade with the Uro. So we can then play a Dauthi Voidwalker, send in the army. If they block, their Uro is gone forever. Taking white mana. off their carpet. That's not a thing I'm a big fan of. That's a lot of white mana. Feels like we're losing some of our friends here. Oh, it's a Triumph. Let's go and get an Undercity Sewers, get a little bit of Surveil action. Thoughtseize, I think your time is probably come and gone. We could try and Thoughtseize something out of their hand and put it under the Dauthi, but I'm not sure there's going to be anything we want to. A Striped Riverwinder. Not looking so hot right now. It is just a redraw, and I would rather have a redraw of a land. A redraw of a spell than a redraw of a land, actually. So this is better than a troll in this particular situation. Alright, I very much want to brainstorm away this Reanimate. We don't want the Entomb, we don't want the Reanimate. There's a lot of cards we don't want. We don't really want the Dazes either. Okay, if we put back a Reanimate and a Daze, because we can't use Reanimate as a ground seal, then in our upkeep we can Entomb so that we don't draw the same thing again. Alright, let's get this Dauthi Voidwalker down. This way if our opponent turns the Triumph sideways, we take 5, but they take more on the crackback. But the Uro presumably comes down this turn, but giving us a big Orc army is really annoying for them. I doubt this Daze in our hand is going to do anything, but it's blue and might pitch to Force of Will and it's just better than the Reanimate. So we're going to be entombing in our upkeep to make sure that we can draw a real card. So we're probably putting an Entomb in the graveyard. Alright, we've got some Carpet Flowers triggers going. Yep, it's green mana and blue mana, so it's your friend and mine, Uro. Right, we're on turn 6 now, so I think this game has gone on long enough that our opponent is heavily favoured. Okay, we'll get some pings down, I suppose. So we have a 6-6. If they draw one additional card at any point, we end up with a 7-7, which becomes the biggest thing on the board, which changes the dynamic of everything. Although we can still attack with our Orc army. If they block with the Uro, they trade it off, and it goes forever. But if they just let it through, then they can crack back and gain 8. So that's not going to be amazing for us, is it? But we'll be hitting for 9, so that's just chipping 1 a turn, but our opponent gets to hit for loads more. They could have something like a Veil of Summer to cancel out these pings. That might be something our opponent might want in their deck. Okay. If this attacks once, though, it does pump our guy. So it's kind of a weird stalemate now, where our opponent is a deck that wants the game to be not really progressing, whereas we need to get to our end game. And we've kind of already gotten to our end game and passed it at this point. Yeah, white removal deck's pretty good into the Reanimator strategy, generally speaking. Oh, I forgot to upkeep Entomb. That was so loose of me. I was too busy talking. Streamer Brain in full effect. Okay, I'm just going to bash for 3 here. They can't block it. If they attack, then we have a 7-7 on blocks. We're definitely going to Entomb away in a second. Yeah, that was really loose for me. I'm sorry. I think we've already lost this game, to be honest with you. So my brain is already checking out a little bit. Because if the Triumph comes on its own, we block and kill. Okay. So we're just sitting here while I chip them down for 3 each turn. Maybe that is okay for us. After Entomb. What card do we not want to draw? I believe the card we want to draw least is... I was going to say Entomb, but we've already gone through all our copies of Entomb. Maybe it's Reanimate. I don't really want to draw that. Oh no, there is a copy of Entomb there. It's probably actually better for us to draw than Reanimate right now. So at least Entomb is a shuffle effect. A Barrowgoyf. That is a pretty good card. Let's crack in with the Dauthi. 5 turns of this, and then we win, I guess. Seems very unlikely that that's going to be what happens, but we'll deploy some stuff. Alright, we're getting some action from our opponent here. I think we're getting a hardcast Force of Will, which will put a Force of Will underneath our Dauthi Voidwalker. So I'm going to Daze this just to bounce our Undercity Sewers so we can Surveil. Just convert this Daze into a Surveil 1. Although, if they're tapping out for the Force of Will, we might just get them with a Daze, which is wild. Turn 8 Daze. Incredible. Even if they just pitch cast this, I would have still Dazed it just to get the Surveil. But they were umming and ahhing between paying for it and not paying for it. Trousers. That's very good for us. Okay, let's get... another Orcish Bowmasters is pretty good here. Alright, I'm feeling not so terrible about this one now. Are there any creatures in the graveyard? No. So what we can do is we can attack with the Barrowgoyf. And then play our Bowmasters, ping itself to put a creature in the graveyard. This will then crack as a 6 and be able to swipe through the Uro. It will also be pretty close to lethal damage. There are the Bowmasters. So they're going to ping down our Bowmasters. So that does pump our Barrowgoyf. Sure. That's pretty good. Wait, it didn't pump all our things. We already have a creature. Am I missing one? Oh, the Striped Riverwinder. We already had a creature. Apologies. I'm just not used to seeing blue creatures in our graveyard in this deck. Right, I will ping this Orcish Bowmasters. That puts an Orcish Bowmasters underneath our Dauthi Voidwalker. This gives us a really nice block. Uro is gone forever. That was a wild attack. Maybe they're just in a position where they don't think it's going well for us, or they're going to try and sweep the board. They are hard casting a Fairy Macabre. Alright, opponent, if that's what you got to do. So there's a bunch of stuff underneath this now. Do we want this Orcish Bowmaster? Oh, we already have an Orcish Bowmasters here, don't we? They could double block here and we could blow them out with the Bowmasters. That's fine. Yeah, we'll attack with just these two and just keep that 7-7, I think. Right, we've just got a chump block here. I'll take it. Got this little surprise Bowmasters waiting in the wings. We can Bowmasters counter it with our own Daze just to bounce the Undercity Sewers. It's the thing we're allowed to do. Alright, we managed to tie that one up. I thought we were done for sure there, but we managed to get through. They've got a lot of graveyard hate. A lot of graveyard hate. Are we supposed to just be completely off this? Although the Atraxa was a big part of how that game worked, to be fair. And what do we have instead? Like our full... Like if we take out all of our Entomb Reanimate plan, that leaves us looking for 8 cards to put in, and then we have incredibly slim pickings for win conditions. Want that slimmer pickings for win conditions. Right, just have all these back in. And the Daze gets a lot worse here. So maybe I'll have this Force of Negation. Just as a little bit more of a reliable counterspell. Do I want to have more threats? So we could like strip this out and also have an Archon of Cruelty. I don't hate that. It is more bad draws for us in certain situations. We got Ponder. Barrowgoyf is fine. I will keep this one. Having a lower selection of Wastelands, and obviously we only got one less Wasteland than the current good build of this deck, so it's not like we're a million miles away from it. But it's just a lot more difficult to just cheese a game with Wastelands when you have 2 of them, and just getting that double Wasteland, your opponent doesn't get to play the game thing, which has happened to us several times today. It's a powerful thing to have in your arsenal. Misty Rainforest. Are we going to see a Ponder? We are going to see a Ponder. I will Ponder as well. Believe we are going to Ponder off of this Underground Sea. Striped Riverwinder. Orcish Bowmasters is a big hit here. Do I want the Riverwinder? It's a blue card. It is just another draw. The Entomb is interesting and will force our opponent to interact with it. I think I'll put the Entomb on the bottom, and then the Striped Riverwinder, and then the Bowmasters. I should have put the Riverwinder into our hand actually. But you don't get to reset the Ponder. You can't undo. And we need to be careful with our clock here, because we've only got 10 minutes left. Like, we do have more time on our clock than our opponent, but we need to make sure that it stays that way. Right, if this is a Beanstalk, I'm going to snap off this Force of Will, pitching a Borrower. Carpet of Flowers. This is annoying. I think we're going to fight over the things that draw them more cards and, you know, get their engines up and running. So if they add green mana here, this could be a Beanstalk. It's green mana. Yes, this is what I would like to fight over, please. Okay. Even though Orcish Bowmasters might be able to cheese them. So we're going to draw the Striped Riverwinder. I don't know if we want... I don't know what we want here. I'm going to just have this Bowmasters ready to go, and then we can decide if we're going to play the Bowmasters or if we're going to cycle and take the Entomb. Because we can cycle, draw the Entomb, cast the Entomb, and just have any reanimation spell really good. And this takes 1 mana away from our opponent by not doing anything right now. An Uro. Okay, I'm going to respond in that case. I'm going to get my free value here while I can. Orcish Bowmaster, doing the work. We're going to do some bashing. And then we're going to play a Barrowgoyf and just try and put the pedal to the metal, as they say. If our opponent does have Wastelands in their deck, which is a thing these decks sometimes have, they have like a Loam engine, occasionally like 1 Loam and like 1 Wasteland or 2 Wastelands. If they have that and they just spend all their time doing that, then they're going to die to our creatures in play. We do have a Daze. They've got loads of mana if they want it. Oh, really? They should have added mana to your pool there. So the reason they didn't add mana is because they wanted to see what they drew first. They wanted to see what they drew, but I think at that point you probably just have to take a bit of a guess and make sure that you resolve your Beanstalk. If they have spells to cast, then that's fine, I guess, because at least they have something they're casting in the second main phase. But they had to get rid of the Barrowgoyf, which means we still have these little friends kicking away. Alright, I guess we're going to be Barrowgoyfing again. See, this is why this Reanimator deck is so strong. It's just because you have the ability to just play like a tempo game, but also have this I win button, and it's really hard for your opponent to navigate sometimes. I find it really hard to navigate how I'm sideboarding when I'm playing this deck, but people who actually play this deck a lot and are good with it are putting up some incredible results. Okay, nothing off this carpet. Another Beanstalk. Okay, this one happens, I suppose, and we ping you for 1. Are you going to play something in the second main? You get 3 mana out of it. 3 black mana. Is they going to have their own Barrowgoyf? They have their own Bowmasters. Okay. So this makes any reanimation spell getting us a Bowmasters pretty good. Cycling their Lorien Revealed. Nice. Meticulous Archive. Getting their Surveil on. This game is very, very evenly poised. I could just bounce and remove this straight up. Or I could cycle this Riverwinder first. That I think is... that does give them an extra Bowmaster though, doesn't it? I think we're going to Petty Theft this token out. This means that they have to block with a real creature. So they probably chump block the Barrowgoyf, which allows us to cycle the Riverwinder. Cycle this. Okay, we drew a Bowmasters. That's fine. Do I want to play this land out? If we draw a land next turn, it means you get to do Bowmasters and Borrower. So I think we do play the land out here. Alright. We have very much 1 damage away from lethal, and this 1 damage from our Bowmaster is the lethal we need. So if our opponent doesn't come up with something here, they're in trouble. Any green spells here... Okay, they're just going to play an Uro. So this is going to pump our Orcish army token here. But they're going to be in a similar bind where our Orcish Bowmaster is going to be pinging them down a bit. We have other Brazen Borrowers we can draw. And just take this out. So we get the Bowmaster down next turn, which can get a ping off. Would they trade this? Probably. Is there a way that we can make it so we don't lose that trade? No. We probably want to cycle this Riverwinder. Although if they have a Bowmaster, that is really annoying. I guess we're just passing here. Are they going to crack this? They didn't crack it at end step. So we can cycle this whenever. We can choose if we're playing the Borrower or the Bowmasters. It's almost certainly going to be the Bowmasters. A Brainstorm. Well, who am I to say no to a Orcish Bowmaster of this quality? Let's just ping your face. And we're going to end up with a very large Orc army token here. Beautiful. It's not often you get to actually catch somebody's Brainstorm, but boy howdy does it feel good when you do. 1 upstairs, 2 upstairs, 3 upstairs. So this is going to give us a 7/7, which is going to be big enough to deal with the Uro, which I think is where our opponent lost the previous game of attacking with an Uro into a Bowmaster that could kill it whilst I had a Dauthi Voidwalker in play. Okay. We're doing this whole shenanigans again. I will ping you for 1. So if I block here, they get to replay the Uro. I'm just going to take the hit. I guess they can replay this Uro anyway, actually. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, they can't replay this Uro, can they? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, no, that was right. Because if they replay the... Oh, no, they had a fetch land. Oh, there's lots of things to keep track of here. I think we didn't need to let that through. They got a lot of green mana over there. Yeah, they're just going to replay this Uro. Yeah, we just took some damage we didn't have to there. That was not ideal. We're going up to 12. We'll ping them. I don't think our life total matters very much here. A Leyline Binding. Oof, that's a good one. We do get to ping them again. There's nothing we can really draw here, but I will cycle my Riverwinder. Yes, I'll cycle the Riverwinder. Storm. Okay, that's a good one for next turn. We're going to lose our Orc army, I believe. Yep, that's pretty strong. This Uro is doing some work, as it usually does. What do we have? An Entomb. Okay, so we could just Entomb, Reanimate an Archon of Cruelty here. We can do exactly that. Our opponent's got 3 cards in hand. Okay, we'll put these back. Try the Entomb Reanimate line. I think it is the Archon of Cruelty I want here, just to get this out and just get a nice big bash in. Are we in? Or do you have this fairy you've been sandbagging this whole game? Okay, they have a Force of Will, which is going to let us ping with the Bowmasters. Do I want to trade this off? I don't really want to trade this off. I think we're just going to have to take 6 again. We didn't take 6 earlier when we didn't have to. Oh, you got a plow as well. Yeah. It's all going a bit awry for us here. I wonder what they take out here. It could be the Bowmasters, or it could be the Barrowgoyf. They're going for the Bowmasters, sure. But if they connect with the Euro, then we get to connect with the Barrowgoyf. We've also got 3 damage waiting over here. It's been a pretty good game. Lots of back and forth here, very close. I think we're just going to take the 6 here. Like, we could try and stall this game out. Our opponent's got 3 minutes left. But I think I'm just going to try and actually win this game. Might not be easy because our opponent's got the Beanstalk going now. 4 mana, a Brainstorm. Yep, that was one of the cards I would have expected to be in our opponent's hand. And they had 3 cards that weren't doing much. And we had a Bowmasters in play. Alright, a Brainstorm in our upkeep to get the Miracle Triumph of St. Catherine in. Pretty solid. Can we draw a reanimation spell for our Archon? Another card with the Beanstalk. Our opponent is very much in their element here. And they're ploughing our guy. Jeez. They should have waited till their Beanstalk trigger resolved, I think. A Force of Will. That's a little bit too late. They get to bash in with this. I think our opponent's got this one. Is that true? If we draw a reanimation spell for Archon of Cruelty, maybe it flips the game because that card does so much work. But it's not looking good. I wish we'd have saved 6 life earlier. I was suspicious of my opponent's attack into our thing. I think we just save ourselves a little bit of life here. It's not pretty, but it's the world we're living in. Yeah, this carpet has done a lot of work for our opponent. Black mana. Hard casting that Fairy Macabre. That checks my Brazen Borrower quite nicely. Or using my Brazen Borrower up as a removal spell, which is more likely. This probably means they have a second Fairy Macabre, because one of the ways they lose this game is if we get Archon of Cruelty, and I have to imagine that means they have another one. An Orcish Bowmasters. Goodbye, Mr. Chips. No more Brazen Borrower. We are done, I think, here. The Archon of Cruelty doesn't work into what our opponent's got going on there. Yeah, our opponent fought really hard for that one. I think they played the second game a little bit shakily. I think they gave us chances to win that one when maybe they already had it locked up. But it's a pretty good match overall. Our deck definitely felt like it was doing some pretty good stuff. We just couldn't quite get over the hump. We were pretty close at times, but not quite there. Alright, let's go to round 4. Alright. This is our opener. A single black mana is not going to cut it. Let's mulligan. Brainstorm covers a lot of sins. I will keep this, and I'm going to throw back the Undercity Sewers. Like, we could keep it for the random spike, but I think that's not really a viable way to approach things. A Flooded Strand from our opponent and pass. A Striped Riverwinder. Okay, we have a plan now. I'm going to cycle the Striped Riverwinder. Let's see what our opponent does, and then we can make some educated guesses about what they're playing. Meticulous Archives. So we could be looking at a Dreadnought deck. Prismatic Ending. Okay, that doesn't give us any more information. A Ponder. Sure. Make a 5/5 hexproof and laugh in the face of their Swords to Plowshares. Urza's Saga. Okay, so this speaks to me that our opponent is playing the Cephalid Breakfast deck. Okay, and Entomb, that is better. That is better. Entomb. A Force of Will. Pitching Nadu. Do I want my Atraxa? I do want my Atraxa, I think. I'll pitch a Striped Riverwinder because we already got one in the bin. So the blue card of Striped Riverwinder coming in pretty clutch there. That means we get to keep our Brainstorm. Let's get an Atraxa in. Let's get this Atraxa down. If our opponent's got a Daze, that would be annoying, but nope, we're just in. Okay, I'll take creature, probably Orcish Bowmasters, because that can actually remove their combo cards. I will take a fetch land here. Do I want a Brainstorm or Force? I guess we take Force of Negation. Not the most impressive hits. Force of Negation, not the most useful card against what our opponent's doing. Force of Will, on the other hand, would be pretty good. But they're basically a creature combo deck that does have a card they want to cast at the end, but that's a problem for later. I'm pretty sure our opponent's playing Breakfast. The selection of cards they've shown us and the Nadu here feels like Breakfast. What is this going to be? 3 mana, a Teferi. Well, I can't be dealing with that one. Force of Negation helping us out there. So now we get to Wasteland away this as a Saga. Bash with our Atraxa. And we can hold up this Bowmasters. I think I like it more as a removal spell. But if our opponent goes for like a Brainstorm or something, then who am I to pass up the opportunity of all that value? A Swords to Plowshares. Pretty strong. Do I just want to get this down and get the damage going? Our opponent kept the card on top of their library. Is it more important for me to get the damage in? Or is it more important for me... this is tough. I think I want to put the pressure on. I wouldn't fault somebody for holding this in hand. But our opponent just needs to assemble 2 things and then they win the game. So trying to stop them having enough time is good. Alright, a plow. That's pretty good too. A reanimate. We don't have anything that this works with right now. Actually, that's not true. We have the Striped Riverwinder. That's pretty good. Let's do that. Nearly missed it. There we go. So not used to having blue cards in my graveyard. Blue creature cards. Boom. Striped Riverwinder. Here you go. Can't plow that one. We can bounce a thing. Is this a Nadu, is it? Not a big lover of that. Animate Dead. Does that do anything for us here? No. Attack with a Striped Riverwinder. If our opponent plays a thing and we have to bounce the Nadu, then that is the life we have chosen for ourselves. A Nomads in Core. Okay, I hate this, but it's what we have to do. If they have a land, then this does nothing. If they don't have a land... Okay, they had a land, so it does absolutely nothing. Cool. Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. There is the Nadu. So they get to draw 8 cards now. 2 for each creature each turn. So by the time we untap and go to draw step, they can have 8 new cards. Oh, Nadu. Why do you exist? Yep, okay, so they got Ponder here. They might Ponder first and set some stuff up. Atraxa's Oracle, yep. Everything looking pretty breakfasty over here. Can they find a Sephard Illusionist and win the game? Not this turn. They're only on 3 life though. So they will have to block our Striped Riverwinder here. But they can stack some lands on the top and then sift through them using the Nomads and Nadu. They shuffled. Okay, so something has to go under the bus here. Is there any point attacking with this? They're just going to chump block the Riverwinder anyway. I'm going to draw some extra cards. Giant Halfling, that's a chump blocker for later. Narcomoeba. That's another chump blocker. So in a situation like this, the Troll of Khazad-dum would obviously just crash through, but it would also die to removal. Alright. The Nadu is gone. They have another Nadu, so they do get to continue doing this next turn. We could bring back their Nadu, or we could play our Brazen Borrower. How do I feel about having our own Nadu here? What does that actually do for us? It's a 3/4. That's pretty good, but if we draw into an Entomb, we can just Entomb Archon of Cruelty next turn instead, which is very good. So I think we're not going to play the Animate Dead out because it's just better if we draw an Entomb. So our opponent has many, many resources here. There's a Delighted Halfling. Our Daze not really going to cut the mustard here. A Narcomoeba. Yep, so they're going to play the Nadu last, and then they're going to be able to draw 2, 4, 6, 8 cards. Do I think I can beat them drawing this many cards? Yes, if they don't draw a Force of Will. If they can force our potential Entomb off the top, then we lose. Because over the course of a couple of turns, they'll probably draw their whole deck. And then they just cast the Oracle and win. So far, no Force of Will though, so we are playing the game. Also, if they tap low enough, then we might be able to Daze the Force of Will. Now, this does involve us drawing the correct card. Prismatic Ending. Sword to Plowshares. So they can plow their own creature as well to get around the Archon of Cruelty trigger if they see it. I've got a whole bunch of cards. Let's just move those to one side. I will play out this Borrower. It's not the most exciting of plays. Oh, are you going to use your plow on this? Okay. This gives us a line. Obviously, they're going to draw another 8 cards. But this gives us a line to Entomb, Animate Dead, kill our opponent. We didn't draw the Entomb. That is obviously a bit of a pain for us. We'll go to attacks. We'll send in the Riverwinder. Just show us the Force of Will. Draw the Force of Will, and then we can probably just scoop this one up. I'm just being given lots of false hope. Okay, there's the Force. That's enough. Because they can chump block here, and they can just draw through their deck. Okay, Nadu. Cool. Removal. Orcish Bowmasters is fine here. Consign Memory isn't really where I want to be. I don't like the Force of Negation. I haven't enjoyed this Force of Negation being on our deck at all today. I don't think I like the particular build we're playing today and adapting from. Also, I don't like the fact that we have Fatal Pushes and we don't have any sort of go for the throat removal either. Feels like we're leaving ourselves a little bit exposed. Any explosives can kill a whole bunch of their things. Daze is okay here. Again, this is a matchup where being able to Wasteland them is really good, but we don't have that. The Dauthi Voidwalker is good against their graveyard plan, so I'll take that. And then we probably have to trim some of our graveyard plan. How useful is Archon of Cruelty? Pretty good. They're trying to assemble 2 creatures. This breaks it up. Atraxa drawing a bunch of cards, also pretty good. Thoughtseize against combo deck. I like this. How much do I like the Dazes? Our opponent's probably going to be playing around the Dazes relatively well. I'm better off just trying to remove their stuff and have some hard counters. And then we can trim some of our reanimation package here. Let's get rid of 2 Animate Deads, I think. We could board in the Barrowgoyfs. They're relatively easy to block, and they die to Swords to Plowshares very easily. This is definitely a no from me, because these cards won't leave our hand. Okay, this is fine. We don't have to worry about them hitting our lands, so we have access to just playing on the Underground Sea first in case we draw the Dauthi Voidwalker. We want to be able to deploy that as early as possible. So this is just a turn 1 classic ponder hand. Probably throw back the island. Oh, excuse me, sorry, yawning there. Alright, we throw back the island, and then we ponder off the Underground Sea. We know our lands are secure and our opponent's not going to mess with them. Unless there's some random technology they're employing these days that is new to me. But Node tends not to have the space to do that sort of stuff. So keep this, bottom of the island. A Striped Riverwinder, not really where I want to be. I don't really want any of these cards, to be honest. It's in any order in shuffle to me. Dauthi Voidwalker, that was one of the cards that I mentioned I wanted. This stops us losing on turn 2. Orcish Bowmasters is also pretty good at stopping a bunch of things our opponent can do. I will play out the Dauthi Voidwalker. The Riverwinder, it's back. Windier than ever. Okay, let's get the Dauthi Voidwalker down. You got Daze over there? Is this worth a Force of Will to you? Who knows? We're just in. Okay, so we're not going to get killed by the Cephalid Illusionist combo whilst this is in play. That is a nice thing to have. Obviously their deck has Prismatic Endings and Plows, so they're going to be able to take out our Dauthi Voidwalkers when the time is right. Cavern of Souls, sure. Naming Wizard. You're going to deploy your little friend. They're going to play a Shuko. Okay, that's the sorcery speed one, so that's not so bad. Wouldn't mind drawing a land. Did not draw a land. Interesting. So I could high roll here and brainstorm looking for a land. I think I want to do that. If we miss, it's... well, I hit a land, didn't I? But I also hit a force, so that's not the end of the world either. What card here do we not need? Probably the Striped Riverwinder, isn't it? So if we go... so we can reanimate the Striped Riverwinder this turn. So we're not going to be playing Bowmasters this turn, are we? So we put Bowmasters on top. Then a Striped Riverwinder. Then we play the Undercity Sewers. We mill over the Striped Riverwinder. Then we reanimate our little serpent friend. And now we have a 2-turn clock, if this resolves. I don't think we fight to get this in. A Brainstorm. Be my guest. So, we can't counterspell their Illusionist, but we can counterspell whatever deals with our Dauthi Voidwalker. So we should be fine with having this force. And we have an additional blue card in Striped Riverwinder, whereas Troll wouldn't be a blue card. So, the pros and cons of this card have definitely been showcased a lot today. I think on balance it's definitely worse than Troll, but I think it's certainly playable. So here comes the Nadu. Not a lover of that one. They get to draw 2 cards because they get to put the Shuko on it. Alright, sure, why not draw this card straight into play? They're going to Surveil first. And then another Nadu. Okay. Nomad's Encore. I don't really want this, but this doesn't actually... this is just 2 cards right now. Is this annoying enough that we counterspell it? I don't think it is annoying enough. It does block our guy in a really irritating fashion, but they already can block it anyway. This feels bad news for us. Another Ezra Saga, why not? They can just have more aggro elements than we do. There's a Swords to Plowshares. An Orcish Bowmaster. I would have loved to have had an additional land. What do we have in the exile pile over there? We do have an additional land if we want it. So what? That land can't fetch us any of our lands though, right? No, it's the 2 different colours. Because I would like to be able to like bounce the Shuko, kill the Nomad, and then kind of carry on from there. Right, I think we play the Bowmasters first. They're going to draw these cards anyway. Force of Will, pitching Brainstorm. Am I Force of Willingness? If I Force of Will this, I get my Bowmasters, I take out their Nomads. They already have the combo assembled. And then they just have a Plow that takes out a Dauthi, and then they get to win the game at some point. I could cycle the Riverwinder first and see if we find anything, but what would we find in a situation that actually helps us here? They can't win from their graveyard anymore because the Dread Return is gone anyway, so we don't have to worry about having our Dauthi Voidwalker alive. Alright, I'm going to cycle this Riverwinder first and then make a decision. They should... I don't know why they haven't activated a bunch of stuff yet. Oh, I hate this play. I think it's the one I'm going to do. Alright, we're going to try and get this Bowmaster in. Down the Nomads, they're going to draw a bunch of cards. And look, and now they've accessed their Source to Plowshares. There is now a Force of Will underneath our Voidwalker as well. Yeah, draw some extra cards. They move the damage over so we didn't actually get to ping it. We can attack with our Striped Riverwinder and our Dauthi Voidwalker. They will just plow our Dauthi Voidwalker though. So I think we're just going to attack the Striped Riverwinder. Okay, what would I like here? If I take their Dread Return, I get back my Striped Riverwinder, the Dread Return goes into their graveyard. They get the ability to combo off with Cephalid Illusionist. But we're probably not beating this Nadu stuff anyway. Okay. Let's just get another Striped Riverwinder, I suppose. We can do this. We have to do this at the speed it is written on the card. I'm going to take 5 here. Cast. Get back. We could just get back the Dauthi Voidwalker. Or we could get back the Striped Riverwinder. They're both pretty reasonable. I think we just get back the Dauthi Voidwalker, don't we? It's unblockable. It makes sure the Dread Returns exiled so we can't die. I'll get a Surveil land with this land as well. We're finding the tiny little edges, but I don't think it's going to be enough in the face of just comboing this hard. They're on 7. Okay, they're just plowing our guy again. We don't get to activate that time because it was summoning sick. Okay, so how are we going to beat these giant constructs? Tough. I guess we have to surveil like a big monster and then draw a reanimation spell, and then that actually be good enough to win the game. Alright, they got Force Win it. We're done. Yeah, sometimes the Nadu combo deck is just going to combo into you, and it's hard. We are having a rough time today. Like, we've been playing lots of really good games. Like, there have been lots of 1-2s and stuff. It hasn't felt like we've been just getting completely clowned. Obviously not the result I want to be putting up. Let's go to the final round. Alright, what does this hand do? Got a little bit of Bowmaster action. We've got a kind of cantrip here. We just need to find a Reanimate spell. I think this is acceptable. I think we probably begin with a Polluted Delta so we're not getting wasted. And then we can make our decision about what we're doing with all of our various bits and pieces in a minute. Do we need to be entombing on one? Do we need to be cycling that Riverwinder? Entomb is a bit dodgy because your opponent can then reanimate your threats. Obviously, reanimating a Striped Riverwinder is pretty bad too, but that's not as bad as having our Atraxa reanimated. Alright, they're playing something over there. So we could just get a Surveil land at end step. That is also fine. Basic Island. Delver of Secrets. Alright. I'm just going to do this now. We've already seen what land they're playing. I would like to have a bit more information about what we're drawing and see if that changes what we want to do with this Delver. I think what we're going to do with Delver is just Bowmasters it. You can go into the graveyard, Striped Riverwinder. I enjoy you, but I don't need more of you. So we're just going to play this Bowmasters with Daze back up and just take this out. Big difference between play and draw here. Let's get the Bow Boys down. A Daze. I would like to Daze your Daze. Would I like to bounce my enters the battlefield tap land? Probably not. I like the value you get, but I don't want to be shut down on the amount of mana I have next turn. Can I have a Bowmaster? I can. Goodbye, Delver of Secrets. This has been a very good turn cycle for us. Our opponent has no permanents in play, and we have 3. Which means our Daze is also more likely to be useful because our opponent has less stuff going on. A Delver of Secrets. Do I just say no to this one? I think so. Just keep the game where it lies. Dazes get worse as time goes on. I'm perfectly happy just to play out Undercity Sewers whilst we've got 2 Bowmasters kicking around. I like the combination of Undercity Sewers and Ponder here, so I'm going to use our Underground Sea to cast a Ponder. I don't mind having a Brainstorm and a land here. So I think we put back the Force, and then we put the Polluted Delta and the Brainstorm. Mill over the Force if we need to, with our Undercity Sewers here. Or we could Brainstorm. If we play the fetch land out, we can also play around a Daze. I like a Brainstorm here. If our opponent is playing black, then we'll know about it soon, I imagine. We're going to see a Bowmasters. We can Force of Will the Bowmaster. That's what they have. That's why we're doing it now. And we play this out so we can play around a Daze that our opponent may have. Say no to you here. They've got Force as well. Right, things have definitely taken a turn for us here. I was not expecting the black mana, but we played around it as best we could, I think. We could have just like not cast a Brainstorm, I suppose. A bit late now, deck. A little bit late. We just keep it forced and try and power through with an Entomb. I think that is the plan here. The plan is now to Entomb and reanimate a big monster at some point soon. I think they've shown us enough that I don't believe they're going to have reanimates in their deck. But this has certainly taken a turn for us. So using that Daze to fight over that Delver has come back to bite us. And that, I think, is a mistake that we made. I think we're better off playing, getting the Undercity Sewers here. And just trying to dig our way. Because we can't use cantrips. So we may as well have 2 looks to try and find a monster. Oh, sorry, not a monster. A way of bringing back a monster. A Murktide Regent. Yeah, that's going to be a no from me, I think. I don't think I can fight that. Our deck doesn't have a great slew of removal in it. Alright, Undercity Sewers, it's all on you. Let's see if you can dig me up a... Reanimate right now is okay. A land is not. An Animate Dead. That is a little bit slower than I would like. We could bring back our Orcish Bowmasters and ping this down. Or we could take this and then just put Atraxa in next turn. I think that is the play we're going for. And Atraxa hopefully solves all of our problems. As it often does. So we get bash for 5 here. That's a lot. Cast this Entomb. Get the Atraxa. Can we get a land so we can play around Daze? No. We can't reanimate because we die. So it is just a straight up, do you have it or do you not? They've had quite a lot of good answers so far. But I think this game has come down to us using that Daze on the Delver when we didn't need to. Daze, that is the game. Okay. Yikes. That was unfortunate for us. Back is now against the wall. So the problem I see it with playing the tempo game is our opponent is going to be better at it because their whole deck is a tempo deck. Their deck is designed to prey upon specifically our deck. So that's not great. Fatal Push is obviously good. Bowmasters for your opponent's Bowmasters is a thing that's probably necessary. Dauthi Voidwalker isn't really what I'm all about. The Barrowgoyfs are fine. The Explosives are fine. I don't think I want the Explosives. I might want the Barrowgoyfs. Dauthi Voidwalker maybe as well. This Force of Negation I detest. I'm really not like this in this deck at all today. So obviously you want these Fatal Pushes. I don't really want Thoughtseizes. We want punchy cards that do stuff. Daze on the play is pretty useful and key here. Force of Will isn't really where I want to be spending my resources. Get rid of at least 2 of them. But we don't have... See, this is the problem with this sideboard in this deck. We don't have like clean answers to creatures. So we have to always keep in these Force of Wills. We don't just have like, okay, we can just pivot into having a couple of go for the throats or whatever. And then we've kind of got that covered and we don't have these horrible 2-for-1 things. Brazen Borrower does kind of answer it, but isn't great. I'll take out some reanimation stuff. Iron Ponder is good, but these Undercity Sewers are a bit annoying. I think I'm just going to lead off on Undercity Sewers. If we mill over a big monster, we might be able to go turn 2 with Daze back up, and that will just win the game. We haven't done a great job of reanimating monsters today. Oh, we haven't reanimated like the big monsters that much. A Force of Will. It's not really what I want for the matchup. It's in there because it's like a thing we have to have sometimes, but right now that's not what we're about. So next turn we can Ponder and Undercity Sewers. There is a Mishra's Bauble. There is a cracking of the Mishra's Bauble targeting us, so they're going to have a bit of an idea of what we're drawing into. They've got Mishra's Bauble of their own. Oh, sorry, a second one. And then they're not cracking this one. That's interesting. I think I want to cast a Ponder. And then we can use Undercity Sewers to manipulate stuff around. Orcish Bowmasters, excellent. Ponder, fine. So I think we go Bowmasters on top. then the Borrower, then the Ponder. We mill over the Borrowers. And then we're working towards playing some Barrowgoyf action. Our Wasteland isn't so bad for us because we have 2 more lands in hand. They know we have another land, so they saw it off the board, but I'm not sure I like that play from our opponent. An Orcish Bowmasters. We don't want to be the first one to play a Bowmasters. We want to get our cantrips out before our opponent starts wrecking our hand with their own Bowmasters. I do like the Entomb here, obviously. I'll put the land down, and then the Brainstorm, and then the Entomb. Play this, we have the ability to cast this Entomb. Doing our opponent's turn because of things like Force of Negation. Force of Negation can obviously just hit our Animate Dead. Our opponent probably has some Graveyard Hate. Like, what are they doing over there? It's going to go get a basic, perhaps. So they have a a volcanic island. So we are full on Grixis Delver over there. A Brainstorm. They know that we can't play a Bowmasters, so that's a good time to cast your Brainstorm. It's interesting that they fetched rather than saving that for the Brainstorm. They didn't know the top card of their library either. Let's see if our opponent wants to fight over this. If they fight over this, we drop the Barrowgoyf. A Daze. Intriguing. Okay, we'll just say no to that one. So now we draw a Brainstorm, I think, is what we left underneath it. No, we got Borrower. Okay. I think we just jam the big old Barrowgoyf. Do you have a second Daze? Because we can always reanimate this anyway. They have a Force of Will. Okay. That's a nice 2-for-1. So they had a very reactive hand, and they're probably just going to try and dump something like a Murktide Regent, but because we've made, because they used their Daze earlier, it means we have access to our Daze to hit them. I don't think I want this to come into play. Say no to this. I would like to Animate Dead on the Barrowgoyf, please. We're holding up to play around Daze, and then I'll cast a Brainstorm afterwards, once this is in. Okay, let's get Brainstorm going, because I want to cast this before our opponent has access to some of their scarier bits and pieces. Do I want a Brazen Borrower? I quite like the Brazen Borrower. I'll hide the Bowmasters. So the Borrower can answer a Murktide Regent at this stage of the game if they play like another land and just go for a big Murktide. Because the Daze, probably not long, not going to get much use out of this Daze. Unless they play a thing and then we fight over the thing afterwards. Alright. We don't care about creatures that aren't Murktide Regent, pretty much. That's what Barrowgoyf gives us the ability to say. Alright, I would like to attack with this Barrowgoyf, please. Very much like to draw a free card. We didn't draw a card. I don't know if I want to play this Bowmasters out now or not, because our opponent obviously has access to that sort of stuff as well. We're going to see a Surveil land, we're not. I'd like to use this as removal for our opponent's Bowmasters, given the choice. They crack this fetch land. Okay, so I have a... I will float some blue mana. Do I want to Brainstorm here? They have a Bowmasters. They chuck in the Bowmasters. We can't Daze it. We can Bowmasters their Bowmasters in response. If they have a counter spell, we kind of lose there. We're so far ahead with this Barrowgoyf. I don't think we need to be wasting our time potentially losing the game by casting this. Like, we don't care about getting hit for 1 by a Dragon's Rage Channeler. They're going to Lightning Bolt our Barrowgoyf. That is an interesting choice. I think we might be about to see an additional Lightning Bolt. What is our solution to what they're doing here? I think the play here is to chuck in our Bowmasters. Take this out before it gets delirious. So what types? We got artifact, creature, land, instant, sorcery. We can't put anything else in there. I guess we just accept the 2-for-1 on our Barrowgoyf and maybe it comes back again in a bit. We now get to Brainstorm because our opponent can't cast a Bowmasters into what is being shown to them right now. So we can Brainstorm. Entomb is an interesting one. Opponent has to respect this. This is also the shuffle that we're looking for. Do I think Daze is a useful Magic card right now? I don't think it is. So we're going to attack for 2 and then we're going to Entomb. Our opponent is on far fewer resources than we are. I would like an Atraxa, please. I think. Or do I want the removal spell? I think I want the Archon of Cruelty actually as a removal spell. The blue card from Atraxa is actually more useful in our deck than the Archon of Cruelty is as well. But I think what we're worried about here is a big Murktide doing some scary things. A Grafdigger's Cage. We can bounce this the turn we try and reanimate something. That's fine. Doesn't actually impact us in that much of a meaningful way. We don't have to worry about Bowmasters here. Let's try a Brainstorm. We have a Reanimate. We can bounce their thing and just get going. So I guess we put back a land here and one of the Fatal Pushes. And we can bounce this on our opponent's end step, untap, Reanimate. Or we can do it all in our next turn as well if we want to. If we need to draw the Fatal Pushes on top, for example. Land here. And a Bauble. Okay. So you're going to have a bad time, opponent. Petty Theft out the cage here. This has been a really good game. A lot of the games today have been really solid. There's been lots of back and forth. We're playing lots of intricate magic. They're not cracking the Bauble. I would like to have an Archon of Cruelty, please. So they discard the cage and it never comes back again. Then we can take out their only black source, so we don't have to worry about Bowmasters. I didn't want to crack the Bauble because I didn't want to grow our Orc army, but I'm not sure if that's the right play. But let's no, let's not cast the Riverwinder. Let's cycle it. Well, before there's any chance of Bowmasters. Sure, let's just cycle this as well. Much better than having a troll in that situation. Obviously, we've just drawn an Atraxa, which isn't great there, but being able to draw any card in the late game is nice. So they're going to do this now. So I guess the idea is they didn't want to care about the cage. Once it got to the point where it was going away, it's kind of like already done its job by getting a bounce spell was about the best it was going to do there. I think our opponent's dead though. I don't know what they can have for 2 cards that answers this. Petty Theft, not a bad start, but they have 3 damage they're facing down here. They can have a Lightning Bolt, but then they're still getting chipped down pretty hard. Okay, they did have the Lightning Bolt. So they're going to go to 1 because they decided to get rid of the guy that messes with cantrips. And they're scooping it up there. Okay. Game 3. Do I like how I sideboarded here? It worked pretty well. The Dazes get a lot worse on the draw. So I think we'll get these out and get some forces back in. I hate having the forces here, though. It feels so bad. Maybe I'll have another Borrower instead. 3 forces, 4th Borrower. Do I want another Animate Dead? Or a Reanimate? I could take these 2 Thoughtseize and trade 1 for 1 with them. I could take the Explosives and just blow up their 1-drops if they have a really fast start. Alright, we'll try and have the removal spell that we can play on 1 and then crack on 2. This also blows up cages, so we have lots of answers, so our reanimation plan is solid. We could just go back further into the reanimation plan and just rely on our cages and stuff. Okay. We have Undercity Sewers. What we don't want to see here is our opponent play a threat. If they just like ponder or something on turn 1 and we Undercity Sewers, then they waste it and don't play a threat, we're okay. Because the tempo loss of a tap land is annoying. But if they're not actually tempoing us with a creature, then that's fine. Flooded Strand. And no play. This is good. An Orcish Bowmasters. Love to see it. One of the best cards in the matchup. Flooded Strand. We don't need any more land. So that can go away. We've got 2 lands queued up. We don't have Dazes and stuff because we boarded them out on the draw. Our opponent still has to respect them though. So our opponent is showing us Orcish Bowmasters is the thing they have access to. I could play a Dauthi Voidwalker right now into Daze, into a whole bunch of things. We have lots of cards here. Do we just want to start firing these cards in and making our opponent trade 1 for 1 with them? I think that's fine. This doesn't die to their Orcish Bowmasters either. But if our opponent just trades 1 for 1 with a bunch of stuff, you know, that ends up being okay-ish for us. And then eventually something will stick, and hopefully that something will be Barrowgoyf, which is very hard for our opponent to deal with. We got a black mana in the pool, and we got a Daze coming along. So our opponent is going to play an Orcish Bowmaster here. That's the impression I'm getting. Which means that our Orcish Bowmaster is more likely to resolve now because we've got one of the Dazes out of the hand, so we get to play the second Orcish Bowmaster, which is the better one to play because it kills the first one. I wouldn't mind having a land that is untapped so we can play around Daze, but we'll see what happens. Wasteland is not what I want to see here. Hopefully they didn't have it. Why would I say that? Okay, they didn't play it. I thought I'd just curse myself for a second. The amount of times you call out a card when you're playing and then that's the immediate thing that happens on either side of the table is quite wild. Alright, we didn't hit the thing we wanted here. We could just fatal push this. And that plays around Daze. And I'm going to play this Undercity Sewers because we're always doing that. Another Dauthi. I quite like another Dauthi here. I will see if our opponent does anything at the end step. Because we can obviously go at whatever speed we need to. Another Bowmasters. It's our turn to Bowmasters here. You got another Daze? Yeah. It seemed likely given the way that they were being aggressive with all their threats here. But we have Bowmasters plus Fatal Push next turn if we want it. And then we can follow up with a Barrowgoyf and then repair all this damage that's been done to us. Just 4. It's only a quarter of our life. We've got plenty left. A Dragon's Rage Channeler. Sure. That's probably an interesting place for us to point a Fatal Push. So we want to Fatal Push and then flash in Bowmasters in combat, ping this, block this. That is what I'm aiming to do. We're just playing into another Daze here. A little bit. Which is unfortunate, but I think we just need to get this before they get more surveils off. And then if they attack, we can hopefully nail both of their Bowmasters. And then we'll be in a pretty solid position once we get something like a Barrowgoyf down. We've got a Borrower that can answer a Murktide. Do you have another Daze? They have a Force of Will this time. Okay, so we've got 2 for 1 there. We take a third of our life this time. But then we get to drop a Barrowgoyf, which I think is going to be enough given our opponent having to use Force of Wills there. They're paying cost of something, which is probably a Murktide, which might be something we have to borrow out this turn, which is awkward. We're just getting the full Delver experience. Yep, the Murktide is good. They have 1 card in hand. Another Fatal Push would be nice. An Entomb. Okay. Let's Petty Theft this out of the way. And then I'm going to cast an Entomb now, I think. Let's get this Atraxa. It's going to take half of our life. But we have a Barrowgoyf, possibly an Atraxa, next turn. Either of those can stabilize us. But it's getting close over here. But this is just a classic Delver experience. Just threat, Daze, threat, Daze. Threat, Force. And then it's a case of can they get over the line with the rest of the damage before we can deploy the cards in our hand. Sweet game though. I'm enjoying this one. Good back and forth. What are we worried about our opponent having? If we think they have a way of interacting with our graveyard, we're better off casting the Barrowgoyf. Also Pyroblast. I think it's just play the Barrowgoyf. If this sticks, it stabilizes us. We win the game probably in a few turns afterwards. If they have a Brazen Borrower, we just lose on the spot. Why would I say that? Why would I do that to myself? A Lightning Bolt to my face. Okay, do they have another Lightning Bolt? Or an Orcish Bowmasters? Either of those finishes us. If they don't have that, then we get to block and gain life. And the life gain happens simultaneously. It's not a trigger like it used to be before it was called lifelink. They're paying cost for something. I want you to not kill me, please. A Murktide Regent. Yeah, we can block that with a Brazen Borrower. But it doesn't look spectacular for us right now. So we probably have to attack with the Barrowgoyf. Because we need to get the life gain. Is that true? So this has to block. So our mana is tied up this turn. If we attack, they take it, and then we take 4 on the backswing, but we've gained 3, so that will be dead. That sounds bad. I don't want to be dead. Okay. We don't get a chance to do anything with his explosives. We could play the explosives for 0. That threatens to blow up the Orc army token for next turn. Maybe that messes with how our opponent plays here. I'm just trying to think of ways that we can grow our Barrowgoyf. I would like to play this explosive for 2. Are we going to have time to do that? I don't think so. I'm going to cast explosives for 0. We have to block here. But this gives us the ability to maybe blow this next turn. But our mana is completely spoken for here. I think our opponent has this one. We're just like 1 card or 1 turn behind where we need to be. Right, it's a chump block. A Fatal Push. We don't have a sorcery in the graveyard. That is a big problem. We can gain 4 life and go to 5, which cancels this out. So we can blow up the Orc army, attack for 4, gain 4 life. If they take it, maybe we draw a Bowmasters. But that doesn't actually help us here, does it, if we draw a Bowmasters? We need to draw something that answers this. We can't draw any additional cards here because we're on 1 life. Okay, I think the play here is to attack with the Barrowgoyf. I'm just trying to work out if I blow the explosives first. If I blow the explosives first, we can find a 1-drop creature. We don't have any 1-drop creatures. So the Barrowgoyf can't draw us a card. They probably just block with the Orc army. Yeah, I think our opponent just has this one. We were so close to stabilizing this one. If they had like 1 fewer days or something, or this guy took a little bit longer. Yeah, this is the correct block as well. So this takes us up a little bit. And I don't think we have a way through here. So we can play this. We can kill this. We don't get to bring anything back. Yeah, we're just dead there. Oh, that was so close. Oh, so close. That is the end of the match and the end of the league. And we went 0-5. But pretty much every single round was very competitive. There was a couple of 0-2s in there, but they weren't, like, one of them was just like, we happened to get Wasteland out of the game. That happened twice. So I don't feel too bad about that one. The breakfast one was just our opponent teeing off on us, and that was horrible. And we couldn't really fathom what they were doing with the tools we had in our hand. We just had to kind of send it and hope for the best. So let's talk about this list. So an 0-5 record with Striped Riverwinder instead of the Troll of Khazad-dum does tend to suggest that Troll of Khazad-dum is something you could hit that would definitely make a difference to this deck. However, I think there are some really significant caveats we need to add to that. So firstly, this particular build of this deck I don't think is very good. So I took a challenge, one from a challenge one, and there's a lot of flex slots in here that I'm not a huge lover of. So these are the flex slots that you would normally see, as other things. So you would see more Thoughtseize, you have more reliability, would be a thing that you would see here. Very often you would see like 2 Thoughtseize, 2 Murktide Regions. That's kind of the stock build of this deck, is if these 4 cards different. I think, even though we brought out Thoughtseize a bit, the Force of Negation felt really bad. I didn't really want this. I understand why it's in there. It's very good against certain decks, you know, like your super fast combo decks, like Doomsday or whatnot, or Storm, things like that. But I just didn't feel this was a card I really wanted in my deck. I think part of the reason that this was in the build that I looked at was because it is a blue card as well. So by having one of your flex slots be a blue card, then you end up with more blue count. But we don't need that because of the Riverwinder. Also, like these one-offs, that made us a lot less consistent. And I think if we just had a Murktide Region, we were really, really calling out for a creature with evasion that we could play. And I think just a couple of Murktides would have really helped, which again, would be some more blue cards too. So I think I would definitely play a different version of this deck next time around. I think we showcased sometimes when Riverwinder was good. Like we had ways where we just played it and our opponent couldn't answer it and it was just untargetable. And that was pretty good. It did struggle into things like Uro a little bit. Uro was obviously bigger than this, which is a bit of a problem. We also saw situations where we had lands in play and we drew this. So instead of just getting another land, we could go and get ourselves another spell. Potentially. We can, you know, a blind draw is better than a land in that stage of the game. So there was definitely some upside in this, and we pitched it to a fair few forces. So we definitely had some upsides. I think the downside of being able to be blocked was kind of big today. And only being a 5-5 and not a 6-5 was definitely relevant once or twice too. But this doesn't get Pyroblasted, so it's pretty respectable. I think part of the problem with the deck today was that we needed to build in such a way that we accommodated this more. So, for example, we had 2 Undercity Sewers in our deck. We should only have 1. The reason why you have 2 Undercity Sewers normally is because you have Troll of Khazad-dum, and you want to be able to go and fetch something that gives you some like advantage in the late game. So when you go and fetch your late game land, you get an Undercity Sewers, you get a little bit of Surveil, so it's better than nothing. We just want 1 Undercity Sewers here. And in that last game, if we'd have had if we'd have had a land instead of the Undercity Sewers we had, maybe we actually get to deploy our cards 1 turn quicker and manage to stabilize that game, because we weren't a million miles away from stabilizing that one. So I think Striped Riverwinder is fine. It's definitely worse than Troll of Khazad-dum because it makes it a little bit more difficult to cast some of your stuff that you've got going on. But I do think this card is a reasonable enough replacement that you could probably build this deck so it's still legacy playable. Another thing I will say is we don't have to go into like this sort of plan. You could go into playing things like, I don't think Street Wraith is great, but that is a card that is available to play if you want it. I think if you're doing that, you could play some kind of Death Shadow type build where you're reanimating Street Wraith because you want to hurt yourself to get your Death Shadows to then pound your opponent down with stuff. That is also a fine approach and is a little bit more of an aggressive way of taking this deck. But I think the core of this deck that is really, really powerful and really, really egregious is this pile of 14 cards here. The ability to have like the Entomb and Reanimate package with these 2 monsters. So these are the premium monsters to reanimate. And we only have to play 2 of them. Now, as long as we can find stuff that's good in the graveyard, then that's probably fine. Like, another option you could do with this deck is play more creatures. So we could just have the tempo creatures in the main deck instead. So we could have our Barrowgoyfs and Bowmasters in the main, right? And that means that we're going to have creatures that are worth reanimating, because if they're not answering our Bowmasters and Barrowgoyfs, then we can get them back anyway. And perhaps we could even run something like Tainted Indulgence in one of these slots, which allows us to bin off not only the big monsters, but even our little monsters to get them back later on or whatever. So there's definitely different ways you could take this. You could trim a Borrower as well to give you like the Tainted Indulgence that you want. I think there is definitely a build with Archon of Cruelty, Atraxa, Entomb, with all the Force of Will cantrip stuff going on that is going to be very strong, even if it doesn't have Troll. I think it'll definitely be worse, and you're going to have to work out is like, do I want to commit some of these spell slots to Wastelands? Do I want to play more creatures? Do I need a different creature other than Striped Riverwinder so that we have better things to reanimate? Because this was fine. It was, it was decent. Playing this on turn 2 felt pretty good. It felt like a legacy power level thing to be doing. But maybe we can have some slightly better options somewhere along the lines. But I think rather than just being we cut the trolls, we add in the Riverwinders. Obviously, I didn't do just that. I changed the Wasteland for a Flooded Strand as well. So there was a little bit more going on than that. And I also didn't like this particular build that I started with as much. I think I would rather have just a more stock list that wasn't running some of these techie one-offs that just didn't really make the most amount of sense in the main deck a lot of the time. Obviously, these are all good cards, and sometimes they will come up. But I also think we need some hard removal in the sideboard, just to go for the throat or something. Because we don't have the Murktides, we were so cold to opposing Murktides. So I think this deck is best with 2 Murktides in it. So I think I would put the 2 Murktides in over the 2 threats we have in the main here. And that would make a big difference. And then you can choose whether or not you want Thoughtseizes in these slots or not. I think I would rather have the Thoughtseizes for the most part. It's just a very powerful thing to do on turn 1, where our deck doesn't have that many turn 1 plays, right? We have Ponder and Entomb, and we don't always want to Entomb on turn 1. So I think just having 4 Thoughtseizes, or even 3 Thoughtseizes and one other Wasteland would be fine. So I think you can definitely make a better build than what we had here. We did go 0-5, so that reverse trophy, not great. But the games we actually played, they're all real games. They were really competitive games against decks that are competitive right now against Blue-Black Reanimator as it stands. So I don't think this was an embarrassing display for the deck. Even if the results didn't necessarily look that good, we had a lot of games that we split, and we had a bit of a grindy 3-hour league that I've recorded here. But I think I showcased that this deck, maybe not this exact list, but I think something 90% similar to this is going to be viable if you ban Troll. And I think the only way that you can really stamp this deck down, in my opinion, is to ban Entomb. Entomb is the most efficient tutor in the format by a considerable margin. 1 mana to not only find the card you want, but put it in the place you want. That is really, really good. So we have this, which is just too strong in my opinion, because it allows these decks to be a tempo-y deck and have all the sweet tools of the Brainstorms, the Ponders, the Forces, the Dazes. You get all of that, as well as getting the best reanimation monsters. I think a reanimation deck post-banning should be a deck that is dedicated specifically to reanimating. So, playing your Putrid Imps and unmasking yourself, Cabal Therapy yourself, like the mono black list you have now, but instead of Entomb, you have some more monsters and a Putrid Imp. Or, you're playing your Careful Studies, your Faithless Lootings, that sort of thing. So you're ripping through your deck to try and put the monsters in. You have more monsters. More like Show and Tell is. Show and Tell is a competitive legacy deck right now. It's not ruining anyone's day, but it is making some reasonable results now thanks to stock up. So I think having Reanimator be a dedicated reanimation deck that is a bit more like Show and Tell in terms of dedicating your deck to do the thing with a few little peripheral pieces around, that makes more sense to me. I just think that Entomb is the one, in my opinion, that should probably go. It's a unique effect. Unmarked Graves is very different. I'm not sure if the video with Unmarked Graves has been up on my channel yet, but I have a video with that that's either coming out soon or has come out recently, and it shows that that is not the same as Entomb because the creatures you get aren't good enough. So the quality of monsters that you're seeing in Legacy these days, or just that are getting printed these days, are so strong that it's definitely worth the squeeze to play a dedicated Reanimator deck. So I don't think we need to have decks that can be another deck that is also a dedicated Reanimator deck, but on half of the non-land spells doing it instead of the whole deck. All right, long league today, a bit of a rambling conclusion. We attacked some people with Striped Riverwinder. I think it looked all right. I don't like the overall configuration of the deck, like I said. I want some hard removal. I want some flyers. This deck was calling out for some big flyers in a big way. I think the reason we lost games, if we go back and analyse the games, a lot of the games we lost weren't because we were playing Striped Riverwinder instead of Troll. I think there was maybe one game where we lost because we had Striped Riverwinder instead of Troll. But generally speaking, the way we were losing these games, I think, was actually more down to these slots, not including a Murktide, was kind of a big deal for us. We did just get womboed by a combo deck. We did also just get Wasteland into the dirt a couple of times. And those are things that are going to happen. But I think not having a hard removal spell in the sideboard and not having Murktides as a thing that we can do really hampered our chances of winning. And I think this deck was actually fine if you were to play a more stock build. Alright, I am done for today, so thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. And goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles, and lastly the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.